All right, we're going. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Purple Political Breakdown. How's it going? How's your day been? As I already said earlier, this is a return to the podcast. And today's episode, we're going to be discussing Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris. And I'll be moderating, facilitating a 1v1 conversation to see who's the better candidate, why they believe it's a better candidate, what's wrong with the other candidate, and so on and so on. So, with that said, let's get right into it. Bringing up first, representing Team Kamala, we got my guy here, Cypher.
Hey, everybody. Sorry.
How you doing?
I'm doing well, Randall. How about yourself?
I'm doing well as well. Yeah, quick introduction for who you are.
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Cypher, aka Anthony. I do produce content under the moniker of the Cypher Report, Decrypt the World. We can find us on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram primarily, but I'm going to also be restarting my audio podcast as well. We cover a bunch of stuff from a lib-left perspective, but try to do a little more breakdowns and actual history of kind of stuff that we're doing. Latest episode was about TikTok and all of the rigmarole that is regarding that. So go ahead and check it out on YouTube. Glad to be here.
All right, excellent. And representing Team Donald Trump, we got Ashley. How's it going?
Hey, what's up? How you doing? God bless America.
Yeah, so quick introduction on who you are.
My name is Ashley Bottoms. I've been a radio show host for, a good part of a decade. I'm kind of on a hiatus at the moment, looking to get back into it. I do have a YouTube page on YouTube, and that would be at the Bottoms Up Appetite for Discussion. And I'm also on Facebook quite a bit, so you can find me on Facebook. I'm always checking my Facebook emails, and always keeping busy, always working. So just like to be out around the people. So I'm not doing as much content as I used to, but hoping to get back into it.
All right, excellent. So this is going to be a 1v1 conversations. I'm going to ask setup questions to kind of get the ball rolling. But to start out, I'm going to ask a question for you both individually. What is your political affiliation, and how did you get to that point in terms of supporting Kamala or supporting Trump? We'll start out with Ashley.
Sure. I'm transgendered. So being transgender, I was very active before Trump was in office. During the Obama years, and I saw firsthand how I felt that we were being, for lack of a better term, taken advantage of. I didn't see rights. Every time we wanted a right or something recognized, it just seemed like we were being given something else. We were fighting for what they called the bathroom bill, and it seemed like they said, "Oh, we're going to give you June as awareness month." We never asked for that. We didn't want that. We wanted to get the ball rolling. And then when I just saw how things were going with the country, everybody was unsatisfied. I just started looking into, because I was really a liberal, and I just started looking into going down the rabbit hole, looking into politics and how things were going. And then when I saw Donald Trump, for me personally, it was, this guy was talking to me. He was like, we've had enough. Things need to change. And he was just, everybody will say, like, he talks brash, but he's like the father figure you need. You need someone to talk tough so you understand what's going on. And that resonated with me. And I've actually been to one of his rallies, and everybody there, I'm transgender. Everybody was like so nice to me. And I just saw how it felt American to me. And when I felt that, he had me hook, line, and sinker. And then when he got in office, it was, I saw him doing the changes. I saw him implementing things, putting America first. And, that's how I felt. That's what I wanted. I felt like my whole mindset is that when the country's doing well, everybody will do well. And in my corner of the LGBT community, there was too much of people saying, what about me? What about me? instead of what about us? And that's also another factor that kind of turned me. Is I liked how everybody was talking about we the people, not just me. And so that's how I became a Trump supporter. I liked what I heard and I saw results.
All right.
Thank you.
Cypher.
Yeah, so I've been politically engaged most of my life. I know I don't look it, but I am 38 years old. So I just want to put that out there to give some context what most of my life actually means. So when I was in college, I actually started to I claimed of myself to be a libertarian. I didn't really know exactly what that meant at the time, but it felt like that was the right label. So I tried to get involved in both Democrat, Republican, libertarian politics, and this was right before Obama. Obama came to office. I did door walking for Obama, but also still attended libertarian meetings and tried to get involved in the GOP because from being from a Midwestern state that's heavily Republican, being part of the GOP was actually a path forward in order to kind of get results that were needed. Dominated by the GOP. Indiana was dominated by the GOP my entire life, even though I lived in the city. But the GOP didn't want me. I actually went to their head office and was like, hey, I'm looking to get involved, see where things are going. Meghan McCain, other people are saying stuff that I like. So let's get involved. And they basically shut me aside when I said I didn't have money. So that was my political awakening to what the GOP represented. And I still believe represents mostly to this day, even if the rhetoric around it has changed somewhat. I support Kamala Harris for a number of different reasons that we can get into during this discussion, but primarily it is an anti-Trump vote because Trump is an anathema to anything that I believe. Even though he might talk a good game, the policies that he puts into place and the kind of vitriol he brings to the table are just un-American to me. So that's where I'm at.
All right, excellent. So the first question that I want to ask to kind of get the ball rolling is to really start off on why are you making your vote for who you're making your vote for? Very simple question. Elaborate as much as you need. We'll start off with Cypher.
Yeah, so like I said, it's mostly an anti-Trump vote, but there are some things that Kamala Harris is proposing that I see to be very good things. One of those things is the first time home buyer's credit. It's up to $25,000 for a down payment. It is, I believe, the particulars are still being worked out on that, but I do believe that they're leaning towards or have decided that it will be basically a no interest loan on that, which is fantastic. Means that if you're a first time home buyer, you'll be able to get this tax credit for the down payment. If they take it similar to how the electric vehicle tax credit is working right now, that means that money can go directly to the bank or to the mortgage company or whatever the case may be. That way you get that money right away rather than having to wait for that credit on the back end. So I find that to be very good. Another reason that I'm supporting Kamala Harris and will actually go door walking for her is because we do have not enough homes in the United States. We've had not enough homes being built since the Great Recession, primarily due to the overbuild that happened, but also due to the just breadth of margins that home builders can actually have. So when she comes out and says, hey, we're going to subsidize the building of 3 million homes across the United States, and this includes single family homes, that's very good for me because, well, while I already I'm a homeowner, that's going to help other people come up into the country as well, because it's going to reduce the cost of housing. And that's one of the biggest contributors to inflation right now, as well as the cost of living crisis that we're experiencing. But those are two primary things right now.
All right, before we move it to Ashley, can you elaborate a little bit more on the value of subsidizing 3 million homes? Why is that important?
Right. So if my numbers don't quote me on the exact numbers here, but I think they're close. We are about 12 million homes short of what demand actually is. That means that even if even things were affordable, there would still be 12 million people that would be without a home. Period. Like we're talking just a dwelling, not even like a single family home. We're talking about dwellings across the United States. There are some mismatch there. So there's some markets where there's more demand than supply, and there's some markets where there's too much supply, not enough demand, but they're falling to disrepair, dilapidation, etc. By building 3 million homes and subsidizing those, that will actually have knock-on effects to bring more home builders into the market by increasing the ability to not only get better margins, but also have enough people there to buy the home so they're not sitting in inventory for a long time. Hence, building homes is good on that end, and as well as the $25,000 tax credit.
Okay, understood. All right. Before we kind of dive into that further, Ashley,
Yes.
also same question. Why are you making the vote for who you're making the vote for?
Because everything has kind of gone out of control in this country. When we had Trump, things were more secure. We didn't have any wars. We didn't. We had business was thriving, and it just seems like today everything's gone to hell. I mean, it's. I mean, let's look at the housing market. That I mean, I'm not. He says $25,000 tax credit. Well, what are they going to do when everything else goes up? Are they going to, they're hurting to make that, that down payment? But let's be real. I'm a homeowner. I can tell you right now, my housing insurance, my home insurance literally doubled this year from last year. And, what's somebody going to do if they can't afford a down payment? How are they going to pay that kind of money in taxes? I mean, you're looking at the cost of repairs, the cost of upkeep. The stuff adds up. What I spend in a year to upkeep my home, I'm surprised I still have a home. And I mean, I just had a new roof put on the house, and that set me back 5 figures. So, I mean, and you could shop around. It's just common sense is that it costs a lot of money to own a home. And if somebody can't afford a home, you can throw all the money you want at them. It's just not going to happen. You can't just give everything away. It just doesn't, the society doesn't work that way. You have to be able to pay your bills. And while I would love to see everybody own a home, it just doesn't make sense to give everyone a home, because they're going to end up losing those homes. And then you're going to have houses sitting on the market that they can't sell. And that's the problem and to me, that's part of the problem is you can't give things to people who simply just can't afford them. You have to make life choices. Don't overspend. Don't live outside your means. And I mean, it's hard. Trust me, I know. I do everything I can to prevent living outside of my means. And it just seems like every time I turn around, I'm getting hit with an increase in some tax. The tax on my auto insurance goes up. That went up at least a couple $100. And I'm what they would consider a really good driver. I don't have car accidents, knock on wood. And my insurance is getting to the point where I'm like, how am I going to afford this? And I work for a living and I pay my bills, and I'm not looking for a $25,000 handout. So I'm like, why should somebody else be getting that? But the people who are paying for all this aren't. I mean, it's just ridiculous that the taxpayers have to keep flipping the bill, and we're struggling here. And that's, when Donald Trump was in charge, I saw the difference. I saw my bill starting to go down or at least level out. But I'm not seeing that. Every year, it's like I'm getting zonked. I'll give you a great example. The escrow in my home, the last year, 2 years that Donald Trump was in office, I had a surplus. Okay. The first year that Biden was in office, it was over $1,500 that I had to pay the bank on the escrow. That's insane. That's insane because I don't miss payments. I pay my bills on time.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. It shouldn't have to be that way.
Sure.
And all I keep hearing about is people that can't afford. Well, what about the rest of us who are struggling? And Donald Trump, in my opinion, listens to us. He hears us. And that's why. And if Kamala was going to do this, she's in office now. She's the vice president. And I don't care what anybody says. I don't believe for a second that Joe Biden's competent. He hasn't been. I've seen this since day one. I could tell there was something wrong. And if she's in office now, why isn't she implementing these things now when she has the power? Why is she waiting another 6 months? It's ridiculous. Do it now. There are people out there, and I see it all the time. People are crying out there that they can't afford to pay their bills, and these are people with jobs, and you can't go anywhere to complain. That the whole text line for Biden, that's baloney. And the whole, like I said, she's in office now. Biden's in office now, and all they're talking about is airline fees. And people out there struggling, and they're talking about airline fees, junk fees. Who's flying anywhere? I'm not. I'm just trying to live. I'm sorry. I don't mean to go on. I could go on forever. I won't. But that's how I feel, and that's how I got on board with Trump. He listened to us.
Yeah, I definitely understand the emotion. I'm
Yeah,
talking to plenty of Donald Trump supporters on their
right.
feelings on regarding everything that's taken place, which is fair. You can't deny how you feel about certain things. My question for you, so I can get a little bit
Sure.
more elaborations, because I do want to eventually get into criticisms of each candidate. That will happen a little bit later on. But for you, what will Donald Trump do to make the housing market better and making paying bills better?
Well, it's really not even about what he's going to do. What are we doing? We're buying cars we can't afford. We're buying things we can't afford. I mean, I see people out there with the newest cell phone. My cell phone's 4 years old. I see people buying the newest cell phones. They're not cheap. I see people buying. Everybody's driving around the newer cars. But if you got $60,000 for an electric car, then you have money to put down on a home. And it's just it. People need to change their way. You just can't leave it up to a government and say to the government, "Fix my problems." They can only do what's right for the country, but you have to do what's right for you. And if you're living outside your means, then it's not Donald Trump or Kamala Harris that's the problem. It's you that's the problem. And you have to start setting boundaries for yourself. And that's how I was raised. You can't afford a new car, then you keep that used car a few more years. You don't go out and buy another car. And I just see people, they go, oh, yeah, we're going to give you, like Obama gave people up to $4,500 to trade their cars in. And then people were buying cars and trading in their clunkers and then found out they couldn't afford paying for that car. And then they got repoed. That's what's going to happen with the housing market. The housing market was in the 2% range when Donald Trump was in office. I know because I almost refinanced my home, and the bank explained that to me.
Was that in
that it was
2020?
under 3%. Now it's really rocketing. The market's crashing. And
Was that refinance in 2020?
the refinance, no, not at all.
What
This
year
was in
that?
2018.
For 2%?
2018, yes. My bank
Wow.
said yep, it was, I think it was 2.3%, I believe it was. And I just
must
turned
have
it down
really good
because I
credit.
don't have much to go. I don't have much to go. But I never believe everything politicians tell me. That's why I like to do independent research. But I go to my bank, what's the interest rate, And when you hear it's in the sevens, that's absolutely ridiculous. It was lower even when Obama was in office.
So I
And the
do want
housing market's
to
crashing.
pause. I do want to pause you there.
Sure.
So are you saying that the best thing Donald Trump could do when he becomes president, and I don't want to misquote you, so clarify for me, is that he shouldn't do anything to help with the issues regarding paying bills and helping the housing market?
Well, it's not so much he shouldn't do anything.
What do you think he
What
should?
what are we doing? It's not. It's like John F. Kennedy said. Don't ask what your country can do for you. What can you do for your country? And it just seems like all I'm seeing are the people. All they say is, "What about me? What about me? What about me?" Well, put your money in a savings account. Put your money away. I still put money in the savings account because I just don't trust the economy. But it's like you have to spend inside your means. You can't just do what you want and expect the government to fix it.
Sure.
As far as the housing market, yeah, it'd be great if housing is affordable. I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but it should be affordable for people who can afford a home. You just can't give somebody money and say, here's a home, put a down payment on a home. In 6 months, they're going to be losing that home because they can't afford it. We saw that with the automobiles. They were giving them credit. They were buying new cars. They couldn't afford the cars. They had to either turn them in or get repoed. You can't give people something they can't afford. They have to be able to afford it. Yes, if you can afford to live in a home, if you can afford the taxes, the insurance, go for it. Yeah, if I was a first-time homeowner 20 years ago, and this was when Bush was in office, Bush Jr.
All right, I'm gonna.
I didn't get anything. I just paid for my home.
I'm gonna pause you there. I'm gonna pause
Sure.
you there. All right, I get your general sentiment.
Yeah.
Cypher, I'll allow you to respond. Obviously, I changed the symbol to allow a little bit more back and forth discourse, but keep it civil. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm not here to argue. Well, I'm here to argue maybe a little bit, but not be
Understandable. Understandable.
Me too. A little
So
bit.
yeah, so couple of things. So when you say Bush Jr., so this is probably 2003, I'm guessing,
Yes.
roughly.
Yes.
Okay, so I believe in 2003 we were still operating under Bill Clinton's rules when it comes to housing, and I do believe that there was a first-time home buyer's credit on there. You might not have had to apply for it because at the time, and I'm not 100% on this, but I'm like leaning 90% this is the case, that was automatically rolled into the mortgage payments.
No, it wasn't.
So I believe that was the case. Even if it wasn't, that was a thing that did exist for various points in time. So if it didn't exist in 2003, it did exist in the 60s. It existed again in the 90s. It existed again under Obama. This is something that comes and goes depending on the administration. Generally speaking, Democrats try to keep it. Republicans try to get rid of it. It is what it is. As far as your homeowner's insurance doubling, that I don't want to like dox you or anything, so I'm not going to ask where you live. But in several markets, that's very much a big thing. Florida experienced this to an outsized portion due to all the hurricanes that they're experiencing. And I believe the government isn't helping with those payments anymore. So when the last hurricane that hit Florida is pretty much when it started to cascade and they started charging more because the insurance companies were losing too much money. So their insurance market in Florida specifically is one I can talk to because I know a little bit about it. I live in Texas, but I know a little bit about this. It was in Florida that was happening. When it comes to your escrow problem, the reason I asked if it was like 2020 or tried to ask if it was in 2020, that's when the housing market just went bananas because people my age, millennials, elder millennials, were trying to buy housing. They were brought to market a little sooner than they would have been due to COVID. And that was because of space. A lot of people started working from home. People were in like 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartments with their girlfriend or wife or whatever the case may be, husband, spouse, whatever the case may be. And they were seeing that they didn't have enough space. So they started to go look for housing. Federal Reserve cut interest rates to the bare bones to keep the economy kind of afloat while everybody was dealing with the pandemic. And that caused rates to go down to 2 to 3%, 3.2% or so. And so that caused the housing market to spike, especially between 2020 and 2022, which increased taxes between 20 and 2022 because taxes in this country on home value, on property value is, for lack of a better way to phrase it, unrealized gains. Your house is assessed every 2-3 years, maybe every year, depending on your state. And when it's assessed at a new value, it goes up. So my own personal experience with this is that in 2020, my taxes was one thing. 2022, I believe it went up by $4,000 in taxes in Texas, of all places. And then in 2024, after the Austin market started to deteriorate a little bit and started to stabilize, it went down by another 2,000 or 3,000. So that's just the way it kind of boils down there, which brings me to the point that I'm trying to make. With more housing on the market, that's going to actually reduce the value of your home, which means that your taxes are going to go down. That's a trade-off, whether you want to treat your house like a bank, a personal bank where you can make loans against it for a business or whatever the case may be. That's on each individual person. I personally don't think that housing should be considered an investment more so than, hey, you have a stable place to live, that invest in that way. I don't think people should be, using their homes as a bank, but that's where a lot of the wealth in the country is tied up. And that's partly because of our housing policy. So I'd actually like to see that get fixed. No one's talking about fixing it though. When it comes to bills and the like, a lot of the stuff that has happened with food prices and fuel specifically have been due to monopolistic processes in the market that are started to metastasize around 2012, but took off in 2018 after several giant food production companies were allowed to merge. This is especially true within the meat industry. Meat industry went from, I believe, 6 producers to 4 producers between 2014 and 2018. As soon as they consolidated a year or two after, they started jacking up the prices. And that's why bacon was so expensive a while back. That and COVID messed everything up, of course. But that's why bacon became so expensive. Big agriculture is another big problem. So there's, I want to say 60 or 70% of the market is controlled by 4 companies when it comes to pretty much everything you eat in the United States. Milk, eggs, meat, vegetables, all of it's controlled by just a handful of companies. All that started to, again, metastasize in 2012 or so and took off in 2018. And so we're experiencing all these problems partly due to that. Which brings me to another reason I'm supporting Kamala Harris. And the reason being is that she actually, when she was Attorney General in California, she actually brought a lot of antitrust suits to bear. That's kind of happening under the Obama administration, or I'm sorry, under the Biden administration. It's not happening quickly because it takes a year to 2 years to complete an investigation, and those investigations didn't start until 2021. So some of those are bearing fruit. Google just had a successful antitrust against them for the shopping market, online shopping market, retail market, and advertisement market. Ticketmaster has a case against them. The airline junk fees, that's something the federal government can just do without Congress getting in the way of it. They have the power to do it through the regulatory body. So that's why that's going after. It's an easy win to tackle. But the other stuff requires time and resources to complete. And if Trump wins, I do not believe at all that he'll continue that work. So again, it's another reason why I'm voting for Kamala Harris.
Before I allow you to respond, Ashley, I want a point of clarification from you, Cypher.
Sure.
You said that Kamala is going to utilize antitrust suits in pursuit of, fixing a lot of the price increases that you're referring to. Why? What does those antitrust suits do? How is she able to do it? And why should the average citizen care, in the sense that this kind of just goes back to what does it do? I'm really wanting you to simplify it for the audience, and so you make it understandable enough for them to say, okay, so what? So
yeah, so it depends on what is being done, but simply stated, what it does, it requires large businesses, if they're dominating the market too much, to spin off sections of their business into new businesses. And when that happens, that creates more competition within that market, and more competition, generally speaking, leads to lower prices, because capitalism, for to be a little cheeky, but in another way, it's like everybody's trying to get as many customers to their business as possible. And the best way to do that, and the easiest way to do that, is to compete on price, because competing on quality is harder. So a lot of companies will start a kind of a race to the bottom when it comes to prices, in order to get more market share, which is just more customers to their business. There is a lot of been price push from these large businesses. Kraft raised prices, or I don't want to misquote percentages, so I won't do that. But Kraft and several other companies, there's a Forbes article I can link for you guys about it, but they all said that, hey, a lot of our profit margins increased this last year because we just told people prices are going up, and they just ate it because inflation is happening. Antitrust will help bring that to bear. Some of that is going to be already been talked about with the anti-gouging kind of stuff that she's been talking about, but a lot of it's going to come through this antitrust enforcement. Antitrust is going to prevent businesses from merging that are going to get too large and have too much market power, and potentially force businesses to spin off. The threat of the lawsuits will also tends to drive down prices, because those are expensive to litigate, and a lot of these companies know that they are in the wrong, so they'll try to get ahead of it. Similar things happened between 2013 and 2017 with minimum wage, specifically Walmart, where a lot of states started to threaten to raise their minimum wages. So Walmart said, okay, we're going to set our minimum wage for every new employee in these states to $12 an hour. Did that stop the $15 minimum? It did not, but it helped speed up the process a little bit. But that kind of explains it.
Okay. So two things that I want you to respond to, Ashley, from your personal perspective, from hearing it, of course, whether you agree, disagree, you can kind of elaborate. The first thing, and I will say them one at a time, so you can respond to the first one and ask the other one afterward. The first thing that he mentioned in terms of why Kamala is good is regarding, subsidizing 3 million homes. And the basic premise from it is more homes will ultimately lead to lower taxes, which, something that I'm sure a lot of people would be happy about. What do you think about this? Do you like it? Do you think this is good, or are you against this idea?
It's good and bad. You're talking about, okay, great, people are going to be able to be in homes, but you also have to understand who is going to be living in your homes, on these homes. I mean, I've seen good neighborhoods go bad. My neighborhood just had the first string of people breaking in cars just this week. We've never had that in the 20 years I've been here. Now, who's being welcomed into these neighborhoods? That's what you have to ask yourself. If you're giving it to people who can't afford homes, who are you inviting? Now, I'll say it right out. I'm against the open border. I'm against illegal aliens because they have no right to be here. And I suspect that's where it's going. And when you introduce that element into a neighborhood, it drives the prices of your houses down. It drives everything down. People move, people leave. Your houses become worthless. And it's not a racial thing. It's a legal thing. And why people are afraid to say it in today's culture is because they're worried about cancel culture. But the thing is, people are worried. People are concerned. And, they're talking about, the housing, the taxes, everything will go down. But people right now are struggling to keep their own homes. Back when Bush was president, I remember seeing stories on the news about people who couldn't afford a home. They were living in their cars and paying rent with parking spots. Now, is that right? No, I'm not saying that's right either. But you can't just give people homes and expect everything to be hunky-dory. They have to be able to afford them. They have to be able to pay the bills. They have to be able to pay the taxes, the repairs. The minute you call a roofer, he's not going to sit there and he's going to say to you, oh, well, I know you're having problems. Let me help you. He might knock a few bucks off, but he's not going to give you this big tax break or a big break on his work, because then he suffers. And, that's just the way life is. That's the way life is in America. If you can't afford a home, then you can't afford a home. I couldn't afford a home. I would have loved to have had a home 10 years even before I bought my home. Okay. But I knew I couldn't afford a home. What do? You save your money. You work more hours. You put money away. That's how you afford your home. Through your hard work, your sweat and sacrifice, not by living outside your means and waiting for the government to give you the money. You can't do it that way, because the government's not giving you it. The taxpayers are funding it. People like me who didn't get a tax break are now funding people to get tax breaks to be in a home like I am. And I'm telling you, it's not easy to own a home today. I don't know how someone who can't afford a $25,000 down payment is going to pay for the insurance and the repairs. Even to get the house inspected, you're looking at a lot of money. Everything adds up. And I didn't realize that even when I bought my home. And then all of a sudden I start seeing the bills and was like, thank God I put money away to allocate for this, because if I didn't, I would have been up the creek. People have to understand this. And when you're spending outside your means, they don't understand this. Okay, and they're thinking, I'm going to get a house. Right.
So just to kind of go back a little bit, so you're arguing that the bad is the potentiality that maybe criminals or illegal immigrants may occupy the homes. Now, I'll put a pin in that for a second. I don't want to dive into it right now, but to kind of go into the point that you made earlier, you said there was also good. So do you believe it is good of the idea of more homes equating to lower taxes? Do you think that part?
I agree that, yes, it's nice to have more homes, but you have to have homes for people who can afford them. And I'm not saying that, people shouldn't be in a home, but you have to be able to afford it. And I just don't see people living in their means and putting money away anymore. I see people coming up with excuses, spending outside their means, and then saying, what is the government going to do for me? And you can't live a life that way. You can't. The whole point of being in middle class is you work for a living, you pay your bills. That's what I do. I work for a living. I work pretty darn hard, and I pay my bills. Is it easy? Sometimes it's a little easier. Some months I get zonked, but just to say $25,000 and you're going to be in your own home, they're not telling you the whole picture. And the Democrats, they should really, if they're going to do this, they should really explain there's more to it than just giving somebody 25 grand on a down payment. So they should be explaining this.
Yeah. So for the $25,000 tax credit, they're still going to have to go through all of the other processes to qualify for the. No, I'm just saying that's what's happening. So they're still going to have to go through all the other processes in order to qualify for that home. That means the bank is still going to do their due diligence. That means they're still going to have to make X number of money above and beyond whatever the ratio is, income to debt ratio. They're still going to have to do all this other stuff, right? Homes right now. What do you think the typical American home cost right now?
Right now, depending on where you live, I can tell you,
Sure,
I'm
sure.
in New England. I'm in New England.
Okay.
Okay. And I can tell you, in New England, you're looking at about $300,000 to $400,000 for a home,
Right.
for a decent home.
For a
You
decent
could
home,
find
right.
some a little less. I didn't pay as much because I bought mine 20 years ago.
Right.
But my house would be, mine's a single family raised ranch.
Great.
And that would probably be about maybe $400,000, maybe a little bit more.
So you actually understand where that cost is, right?
Right.
So what's 20% of 400,000?
20% of 400,000. You're gonna make me do math now, huh? 1040, about 80,000. If I'm doing the math right.
Yeah. So back in the day, people were told, "Hey, you can't buy a home until you have 20% down," and that right now, impossible. The typical American worker, the person that's a median worker in the United States, is not going to be able to afford a 20% down. Thankfully, we don't have to afford 20% down. We have to afford anywhere between 3 and 10%, depending on the market, depending on your credit, right? 3% of, and I'll just do it on my calculator real quick. So 0.03 times 400.
And I didn't use a calculator.
Is 12K, right? So 12K. 12K in order to get a 3% down house. Problem is that rent is also outrageous. Rent.
Oh yeah,
right
I'm
now,
not arguing. No argument.
No. I'm saying rent is outrageous right now, right? So if a person can afford a $2,000 rent payment, why would you assume? Like, we'll just say 2,000 is the number. Sure. I don't know what it is in your area. 2,000 rent payment, right? If a person can afford that, why would you assume they wouldn't be able to afford a little bit less, because owning a home is a little bit less typically month to month payment. Like that's
unfortunately where you're mistaken.
Go ahead. It's month to month. I'm saying month to month. Yeah. So I moved from a place that cost $2,100 a month.
Okay.
And I was living in an apartment to a mortgage that was at the time, and this was everything included, mortgage, insurance, and taxes, everything included, $1,800. Okay. Sure. That $300 that extra money, put that aside, goes into savings. You have enough. You're starting to build up your nest egg in order to afford repairs. Why would you assume that person couldn't afford those?
Because you're not looking at house repairs. I spent
$300 a month.
I spent 10 grand on a roof. I spent 10 grand on a roof just a little while ago.
Typically is not required to be replaced on a home.
It depends on the damage.
10 to
depends on the damage. Even if let's say the roof is covered, okay, insurance only pays you have to pay the first $1,000. You still have to come up with $1,000 out of your pocket. You have to understand there are repairs. Things happen. Toilets overflow. I can tell you that as a homeowner, I became a do-it-yourself person overnight.
Sure. I'm not disagreeing with you, but what I'm saying is, if a person is spending, let's use me as an example. I was paying $2,100 a month for rent. I moved into my house. My house was $1,800 a month. Okay. So the $300 difference gets set aside for repairs. I got a brand new house, brand new build in 2019. Okay.
Congratulations.
So that $300, I lucked out. I count my blessings every day.
I wasn't very old either.
But that $300 a month goes towards saving for repairs. That's $3,600 a year. $3,600 a year is enough money to cover most repairs for a home, up until the giant expenses, in which case, let's be real, most people are going to have to dip into savings a bit more than they would otherwise. I don't understand why you would assume that
because people they spend outside their means. Everybody's maxing out their credit cards. If you're maxing out your credit cards, then you think, how can you afford a payment?
No, I get you. Let me ask this then. Do you think people are doing that more now than they did 20 years ago?
I think people have always outlived their means. I just think people are doing it now more than ever. And, I'll say it again.
What if I
did this with cars? We did this. They gave them up to $4,500. People were defaulting.
My parents used the cash for clunkers to get a better car. They did not default. I don't think the default rate was actually that high for that, but don't quote me on that because I haven't looked at it in ages. My point is that if we look at the typical American between 1970 and now, the income to debt ratios has maybe increased a little bit, not by much. So when someone like you says, "Hey, people are outspending their means way more than any other point in history," I'm like, no, they're really not. We still spend about the same money on food. We still percentage wise, not inflation aside. So we're going to go percentage. Still spend about the same amount percentage wise on food, takeout, homes. The things that have outpaced that typically though, housing, because the housing supply is too low, childcare, because there's not enough childcare workers in the United States, and education, because everybody's starting to get a college degree now. Those are the things that people have been outspending. Oh, and medical debt, and that's for a number of different reasons. Partly because we're just older now. So, but anyways, I'm done with that.
All right.
I can't even get into half that without getting upset. But go ahead. I'm sorry right now.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Yeah, it seems like this is a point of disagreement in terms of thinking more homes will be good for the country. It seems like, Ashley, your point of view as of right now, and again, let me know if I'm wrong, is that these homes won't be utilized properly because so many people in the country can't afford it because they spend beyond their means.
They're not really specifying who's getting these homes. They're just saying people who can't afford them, but they're not telling you about the people who can't afford them. You know, like Cypher said, you know, not everybody defaulted on their automobiles when they were given credits, but a lot of people did. And these people getting these incentives, are they being told about all the things they have to deal with when they own a home? And I don't think the government is providing that. They're just saying, here's your down payment. Now it's up to you. And who are they going to go to when they can't pay their bills? The government's not going to take care of them then. They're going to lose their home.
I think that's a fair point. Just if I may, Randall, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I think that's a very fair point. I do think there should be more education, just from the government's perspective right now, and the kind of government economic kind of landscape we've been living in my entire life. They're going to say, well, that's up to the bank to do. But I agree. I think the government should be more proactive with helping people understand exactly the ins and outs of cost just in general. We didn't get finance classes when I was in school. I don't know if you got them when you were in school. It's a thing that a lot of people need, though. Like, a lot of people didn't. So, like, it's one of those things. Like, there's some give and take there.
Okay. At the very least, Ashley, would you agree with the idea, if you know that they're not criminals or potentially illegals going into these homes, would you agree that you would want more people to be in homes in general across America?
I think anyone who can afford a home and wants the piece of that American pie, go for it. I have no problem. I actually, it's funny, is on my street. I know I live right next to a Pakistani family. There's a Puerto Rican family that's down the road. My next door neighbor is about as hillbilly as you can get. We all get along. It's not about who's living next door. It's you have to worry about, it's like you said, what is coming into the neighborhood, and who's coming into the neighborhood. What are they bringing? I mean, it's the character of these people you have to look at. I mean, that's how I've always. I don't look at people as black or white. I look at them as red, white, and blue. But it's your character. It's your character of the person. And, when someone moves in a neighborhood, I'm one of the first ones out there. And I introduce myself. Hi, it's nice to meet you. Welcome to the neighborhood. But if I see bad elements coming in, of course I'm going to be concerned. But I think everyone should own a home. But at the same time, it's like, you have to be able to afford the home. I mean, like I said, 30 years ago, and I'm not trying to tell people my age, okay? I'm not young. I get it. But 30 years ago, I knew I couldn't afford a home. And I said, well, what I have to do is work harder, work longer, put away more money, do what it takes to get a piece of that American pie. I have to do what I have to do. I didn't look at the government for help. I did it, I know a lot of people like that. And when you can do that, you feel so accomplished in doing something that it's like, you can feel that pride in that property of yours. So when you see that kind of negative element come in, of course, you're going to take it personal because you worked hard for your part of America.
All right, I'm going to stop you there. I'm going to have one more question, then we're going to move into what we dislike for each candidate. For you, Ashley. So the question is, another thing that Cypher brought up is, to put it simply, the idea of how Kamala kind of continuing Joe Biden and what he's been doing in regards to antitrust suits to ensure that these very, very, very big corporations are not taking advantage of the consumers and raising prices. So they want to implement things into the country of America to ensure there's more competition, therefore lower prices so we can afford things. That idea of kind of not allowing large businesses to take advantage of Americans and consumers, what do you think about it? Do you agree with it? Do you think it's something that we should
It's a
be
mixed
doing?
bag. It's a mixed bag. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off right now. It is a mixed bag. I mean, she's proposing putting caps on profits, and you can't do that with companies. All that's going to create is shortages. You're going to also, and then you're going to have layoffs. You can't. It's just wrong to do that. You know, if I was a Bill Gates or a Zuckerberg and I was making hand over fist of money, well, it's because I worked hard and I created something and people are buying it. Honestly, if you don't like how something is, you still have the power to change it through your spending. If I don't like a product that Kraft is putting out, and I worked for Kraft for 8 years, by the way, and that's part of how I got my house. Okay. If I don't like a certain product that Kraft is putting out because I don't like their policies, I don't buy Kraft foods. I don't buy it. And when you see your bottom line affected, you change. That's how you change. You change with your spending. And when you can't afford something and you're giving money, well, you're still spending it on the product. You're still getting money. You can't. That's one of the reasons why I say spend inside your means, not outside of your means. Because if you can't afford something, you shouldn't have it. It sends a message to those creating that product that it's unsustainable. You can't do it. And I just think that we're going to implode on ourselves. It's eventually going to happen.
So you don't. So you said it's a mixed bag, and you kind of
Yeah.
named some negatives. What are the positives?
I mean, for people who are spending outside their means, yeah, they're going to have an easy way to get what they want. But it's like, but they're not learning. They're not learning that you have to spend inside your means. Don't get the newest cell phone.
It sounds like you're attributing this to a lot of individuals' choices rather than looking at systemic issues. So
it's not systemic. It's just spending habits. If
right,
I'm buying
so
nothing but Kraft products, Kraft is making money off me. If I don't buy Kraft products,
how many brands does Kraft own that don't say Kraft?
They have quite a lot. Quite a lot.
So you understand that, right? So if
Yes.
I'm a average consumer that is inside the grocery store and I am looking at all of the things that are in the grocery store, every single thing, and I see one product that is, well, let's say $4 and the other one that's $3, and I buy the $3 ones because I am a conscious consumer, and that product is still owned by the mega corporation.
Right.
Am I really actually helping solve the problem?
Well, by the store brand. The
store
sell
brand
their
is
own
also
brand.
created by. That's also created. Some of the store brands are also created by some of the larger companies.
Clip
Del
coupons,
Monte is
look
one
for
of those.
sales.
Right.
Your spending
But
habits
there's only
will.
so much. There's only so much that an individual person can do when it is such a systemic issue. When one company, when three or four companies control 60% of the market, there's not a lot an individual can do. There is something the government can do. The government can be like, hey, you're price gouging. We're going to tax that to bring it more in line to what it should be, because that is called, it's typically when you tax something, then you tax excessive profits. It's called a windfall tax. It's the acknowledgement that, hey, sometimes shit happens. There's like a supply shortage and you benefited immensely from that. We're going to capture some of that negative externality out of this situation. We're going to capture some of that here, and we're going to then use some of that money to do something else with it that helps people. So you get the ability to still make as much money as you want or charge as much as you want. Maybe you're gonna be like, I'm gonna charge a little less so I don't get this extra tax against me or whatever. But then on the back end of that, money can be invested in things that people need. Healthcare is one of those things. Education is one of those things. Housing is one of those things. And these are things that I believe the United States needs to do. We need to have a more robust civic engagement coming from our government. which means doing things that help regular people. And that's what I'm hoping Kamala Harris will do. Will she actually do it? We won't know until she's elected.
I doubt it. She's not doing it now.
She doesn't.
She's in office now.
Have the ability to, do you think Kamala Harris is actually running the government right now?
I think she's part of it. I don't think she's doing it. There's a lot more people behind the scenes, in my opinion.
If she's not the president, then how could she direct any of the agencies to do what she wants?
I think it's going to be more of the same. I think when she's in office, it's not going to be her either.
Okay.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. For 3.5 years, the media and that administration have lied, saying that Joe's competent. We saw it on the debate stage back in June. It wasn't. He wasn't competent. Many of us suspected it. Many of us suspected it. Oh, please give me a break, all right? I want
to put a pause in that because I don't. I'm not particularly interested to talk about Joe Biden right now.
That's fine. That's fine.
With that said, I am a little confused. So, Ashley, I want you to clarify this for me from something you said earlier. You said that it was better under Donald Trump, and bills and prices have gone up because of Joe Biden, and now you're saying that Kamala Harris putting things into place to make things go down, so you have a better situation, similar to maybe even a Donald Trump situation, so prices are affordable again. Now you're saying to me that it's the individual's responsibility. So I'm asking a question. I'm curious to see what you say. What is the difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden's administration? And why do you praise Trump for prices being down, but criticize Biden for prices being up if you think it's the individual's responsibility?
Well, what I'm seeing with Biden is I'm seeing, and even with Kamala and Biden, because they always say Biden-Harris administration, I see lip service. I see lip service, a lot of cackling, and I don't see results. All right. I look at the White House Facebook page every day, and all I keep hearing is the same talking points. No substance. Donald Trump, when he was president, he did rallies nonstop. I could go and see, and he's talking to us. All right. And my paycheck, I was affording more under his administration. I was able to afford more. I actually bought another car. I traded my car and bought a better car under his administration. And I didn't feel the pinch like I did when I bought that last car. All right. So, I mean, I as a homeowner, I saw it. I saw, repairs were lower. Everything was lower. And we didn't have wars. We weren't giving money to other countries for wars. We were actually trying to put us first, take care of us.
I want to touch upon that stuff a little bit later, but that's why I'm asking the question. If things were down with Donald Trump and Kamala says she wants to bring things down again, wouldn't you be okay with that?
I'm not against anyone saying they want to bring something down, but she's in office now and nobody's doing anything. You've had 3.5 years to do something, and the only thing I'm seeing is the opposite happen. And so when she's sitting there and she's saying it in her speeches, oh, the price of everything is up. Well, then why haven't you done something in the 3.5 years you've been in office? And a lot of Americans are feeling that way. And you can stand on a podium and say this over and over again, but Americans who are struggling with their bills are saying it. What's going on? And I'm one of those people. I'm like, what's going on? I always noticed when something happened in America, it was like, well, there's charities, there's all these resources. But anytime something happened overseas, it was always, we got to send supplies. I never saw that under the Obama administration. I always noticed that. I said, when another country was in trouble, we went there. We did something. But when it was our country, it was like, well, we'll get to it. I mean, I saw that with Ohio. It took Biden a year to get there. I mean, give me a break. And then they get mad at Trump when he shows up. It's like, honestly, if there was a threat, if people feel threatened about Trump, then do your job so that people wouldn't have a Trump in their life to worry about. That's how I feel. If they were doing what they were put in office to do, we wouldn't be in this mess.
All right. Cypher, Yeah, Cipher, I'm gonna allow you to respond. This will be the
I'm,
final response
I'm
for
sorry
this,
if I sound angry, but as an American, I do feel that way.
which is fair. Like I said, I understand
It's nothing
emotionally
personal.
the emotions
I'm
here.
not taking anything
Yes.
personal. We're good.
Thank you. I
Cipher, I'll
appreciate it.
allow you your final response to everything that was just said, and then we'll move on to things we dislike about
Sure.
the other candidate.
Yeah. I do not believe that Trump is going to actually address any of the issues that Americans care about. I don't believe that because he didn't while he was in office. Tax cuts aside, because everybody loves tax cuts, even if they primarily go to the wealthy. If they get a little kickback on the back end, that's all good, right? I don't believe that Trump is, you say that he goes to these rallies all the time. I don't care about rallies. Rallies don't mean anything. They're nothing but a series of platitudes that just get the base ginned up, and it feels nice to be there and in community with people, because where you have less third spaces and churches and people don't really hang out as much as they used to. So it feels nice, right? I get it. But I don't care. I don't care what Trump says. I care what he does. To that point, right? He showed up. Let's talk about what Trump did that is similar to an issue that happened with East Palestine, Ohio. Do you remember when Hurricane Marie hit Puerto Rico?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
So
remember.
what happened? So here's what Trump did. All right, he showed up, did a little photo op, threw some paper towels at people because it looked funny. I'm guessing. I don't know why he did it. Whatever. Don't really fault him for that. I don't really give a shit. That's just optics. Whatever. Right. But when it came to actually helping the island get back on its feet, Trump administration was awful. Now we can talk about the fact, he said, "Oh, you have to get there with boats." That was true. There was issues with shipping. 100% an issue with shipping. What there wasn't an issue with was getting the power back up once the ships got there. And the way that was done through private companies that were connected to Trump. And those private companies connected to Trump, either through campaign donations or a friend of a friend of a friend, whatever the case might have been, those companies profited immensely off of graft of the federal government. And they were never held to account under the Trump administration. Were they held to account afterwards? I don't know. I just know that that's what happened, right? Let's go to East Palestine. Biden didn't show up for a year. Okay, we can complain about that. That's a fair criticism. Optics matter, okay? But who was there from day one? The EPA was there. Pete Buttigieg, transportation secretary, was there within 3 or 4 days, maybe a week.
It was a week.
Off a little bit off the timeline, so we'll say a week.
Week too long, in my opinion.
Well, sure, it's too long, but what is the transportation secretary going to do other than show up and give a little speech or something? That's not their job. Their job is to run the administration, that part of the administration, right? The EPA was there from day one. The not secretary, but the transportation department was there from day one. The company was required to pay for cleanup by day 2, and all this other stuff. All the stuff that you wanted to have happened in East Palestine happened, but it wasn't talked about. It wasn't the drum wasn't beaten. There wasn't a person at the bully pulpit saying, "We got to get this fixed 24/7," right? So people didn't hear about it. This is why optics matter. It's why I'd say it's a fair criticism. But East Palestine did get a lot of the help that it needed. Was it enough help? Probably not. Was it enough help after that super winter storm that hit the Northeast in 2013? I want to say it was. Probably not. But the help got there. And we have to do that more. And I just don't see Trump actually going to be doing it. There we go.
All right. So now I want to go. We went into a lot of different directions in terms of what we like about our individual candidates. Now I want to go into what we dislike about the other candidate. For me, from what I've seen from the general social media landscape and the landscape in general, a lot of it's been focused on how much the other person sucks anyway. It has not really been focused on why my guy is good, but their guy just sucks or their gal just sucks. So I'm sure this is much more of a emotionally driven conversation compared to the other one. So we'll start off with you, Ashley. Why do you think Kamala Harris is not a good candidate?
First, I just want to say, is that water bottle you had, is that thing gargantuan or what? Because I saw you take a drink of water. Did you see it? That
Oh
thing was
yeah,
huge.
gotta stay hydrated, 100%.
Absolutely. So what do I dislike about Kamala? Well, I just her inexperience. She in 2020 she was the first one to drop out. All she did was talk about smoking pot and listen to Tupac, and she didn't do any of those. And I really don't care. Uh, you know, believe what you want to believe. I don't care. But she's my opinion. She just is just going through the motions. She is talking about how bad the country is as if it's Trump that's in office. It's not Trump in office. She's in office. Her and Biden are in office. And she's going around talking about how it's bad. When she talks about some of these proposals, it's Trump, it's Trump is the one that is trying to get the abortion ban. Trump isn't in a position to vote on an abortion ban. They talk about Project 2025. Trump has already said he has nothing to do with Project 2025. And every time they talk, they continue to push these things. Trump promised a bloodbath on day one. No, he didn't. I mean, a bloodbath if he's not elected. No, he didn't. He said it was going to be a bloodbath in the auto market if he wasn't allowed, because China would be allowed to bring their cars in. He said he would be a dictator on day one, is what he said. That's what they claim. And he said he would be a dictator on day one because he would undo some of these policies that are killing America. But they take part of the narrative and they push it. And when I see that, and when I see the media take their side and edit it for them, that aggravates me. It aggravates a lot of Americans who sit there and, if there's BS going on, we want to hear it. I try to listen to as much independent news, people who aren't sponsored, people who will put up their sources to tell you. Okay, that's how I feel, and all I see is the same speech, even though it's been debunked. They still say it. They said it at the DNC. I mean, you had the person behind PBS saying that he was talking to the leader. Trump was talking to the leader of Israel to tell him not to take any kind of ceasefires, and that was debunked. And it's you can't. There's no accountability. It feels like on their end. But every time Trump even opens his mouth, they always pick apart everything he says, but they don't do it with the other side. And people are seeing this. All they keep saying is Trump lies, Trump lies. Everybody lies. I listen to what he tells, which is what his truths. Listen to the truths on both sides. And the truths that they tell, they're not telling you the truth. Because when they sit there in the DNC and said Donald Trump promised a bloodbath if he's not elected, he didn't promise a bloodbath. He did not promise a bloodbath. But they keep pushing that. They keep pushing the things that were debunked. And that's what bothers me. And when I see that as a voter, like I said, I was a liberal. I was a liberal back in the day. The only person that turned me off from being a liberal were the liberals. Because now that I think differently, it's like, I'm told that I don't matter. And it's wrong. It's wrong. We're the backbone of this country, the American taxpayers. We're the backbone. And it just feels like we're being, being taken for granted. They want our dollars to pay for all these programs. But yet they don't want us to speak out on how we feel. I just don't like it. When I watch anytime I watch any kind of Democrat run thing, it's like, I'll give you a great example. J.D. Vance proposed a $5,000 tax credit for childcare. They said that's going to hurt the economy. When Kamala said $6,000 childcare, all of a sudden the news is praising them. It's like you can't trust anybody anymore, and that's the problem. There's no trust. There's no integrity anymore, and that's not through Republicans. The Democrats are in power. That's what they're displaying. They called President Trump unpresidential when he was talking in 2016. I see Joe Biden snapping at people, talking down to us. I see her doing it too. I see Kamala doing it as well. They talk down. They talk a little quieter, and they look down at you like they're talking down like you're a child. We don't want that. We just want to be told the truth. That's all we want.
All right. Before we dive into anything anyone says,
okay.
First explain, Cypher, why Donald Trump would not be a good candidate.
Yeah, so I'll just ignore the rhetoric portion of it. I think, although we hear that all the time, My primary reason for being against Trump is a lot of the policies that his supporters like. I don't like his border policy. I don't like it because I think it's inhumane, cruel, and un-American. I don't like it because of the way that he enforced the border during his presidency. He did family separation of people, regardless if they were family or not, and he went up to and slightly beyond the legal edge of the Flores Amendment. I have my own personal problems with the Flores Amendment. I think it makes things worse for it. But with the child separation policy that he did,
Can you explain what the Flores Amendment is?
Yeah, so the Flores Amendment says that basically it was, I think it was 96. It was a judge ruled thing that stated that a child could not be held in detention for more than 30 days in the United States, regardless if they were with their parent in detention or not. This was during the 93 or 94 border surge. There was a lot of issues with children and their parents being indefinitely detained. I think at the border as well, in detention facilities, pending any legal trial, whether that it was deportation or asylum or refugee status hearings. The reason for that was that while that they were getting some sort of education, it was deemed to be psychologically damaging towards children, and that is 100% true. So the courts basically ruled that the government could not detain kids for more than 30 days. After 30 days, they had to be released to custody, whether it's with their parents or to a designated guardian, whether by the state or a family member or what have you. So Trump went as much as he could to dissuade people from trying to cross into the border. You can't really dissuade people too much from crossing the border. There's too much stuff happening in South America, but it's a whole different, or South and Central America. It's a whole separate conversation. But what he did was he separated them from their parents, kept them for the maximum 30 days, maybe a little longer, and then released them to basically random people without care of where they were going. And I know that people are like, Biden lost 200,000 children or something like that. Trump did this worse, and it actually cost us money. The psychological damage that kids went through under that policy is unmeasurable. And we settled with the families suing the government for that, because in some instances they were force adopted from their parents. So that's why there was all those issues there. So that's one. Another reason is I don't trust him on enforcing laws fairly. I don't trust him on enforcing economic stuff fairly. There was a lot of talk about how he was going to bring back the carrier plant in Indiana. Turned out to be a whole bullshit lie. The tax cuts went mostly to wealthy people. I benefited from some of those tax breaks, but I am well off because I have certain things with me. But as far as everyday working Americans, no. That's not where he's at. Doesn't really care about us at all. And finally, I don't want his trade policy. Now, I am not a free trade absolutist. Everybody trades across the globe. I am not a neoliberal. Okay. But sanctioning 10% tariff across all goods and services coming into the United States, you hate inflation now? Wait until you're paying 10% more on every good and service in the United States, compounded for every part of the supply chain it goes through. That's going to be insane. We can talk about whether China plays fairly and whether there should be tariffs against China. One of the good things that Trump did, and I will give him credit for this, was breaking the neoliberal consensus that was in Washington, because he gave Republicans permission to no longer go with big business. Also, if we're on it, separate conversation. So that's one of the good things that he did. But the tariffs, bad policy. The 10% across the board, bad policy. The way they were enforced when he was president, bad policy. Part of the reason why soda is so expensive right now is because aluminum, is because it's so expensive. So that's why we're having some of these issues. And that's why I'm not really a Trump person.
Why is a 10% tariff bad? Can you explain to the average person?
Yeah. So what a tariff is a tax placed on a good at the point of entering the country. So if you put 10% a cost of goods, or to put a 10% tax on all goods and services entering the country, that increases the price by 10%, because businesses are not going to they're going to pass as much of that that increase to their bottom line to you. We all agree on that. Everybody does.
Absolutely.
So it's not going to be businesses paying this. It's going to be you paying this. And if it's on every single good that comes in the United States, there might be some trade-offs here and there. You might see some more jobs being created from it, but it's not going to overwhelm the amount of stuff that is being taxed. Not because we don't produce things in the United States, because we do. We produce a lot. It's just really high goods and services. It's because simply speaking, even if a garment manufacturer business opens in the United States, they're paying American wages on that. So that's still going to increase the price of those garments in the United States. If you've ever been to LA, you see the cost difference between the Mexican goods that are being sold on the markets versus the American made goods that are sold in the markets. It's going to be a similar thing. Is there some trade-off there? Sure. But at the end of the day, you're going to see probably 8 to 10% increase on cost of goods at a minimum. And that's just not good, especially with inflation as high as it is right now. Although it's coming down, it's still going to be an issue. So,
all right. So the first thing I want to allow for open dialogue is something that, to kind of just reference Ashley's points, it seems like most of it is your issue with Kamala seems to be, at the very least from my point of view, is that there's a lot of hypocrisy on the side of Kamala's camp. They lie a lot and don't get the proper criticism for it compared to Trump.
It seems like lip service. They just tell you what you want to hear. That's what I see.
And inexperience. What do you think about that, Cypher? What is your rebuttal to that?
I will say that there's maybe a little bit of truth to some of the stuff that brought up the tax credit thing. I'll have to look into it more because I'll have to read the actual articles. The headlines, though, were clickbait. So clickbait headlines are going to be clickbait. We shouldn't have those. If we could get rid of clickbait headlines, that would be so much better for the country. It would tamp down a lot of vitriol because people just aren't reading full articles. But those headlines were crap, and I'll give you that one for that one specifically. The I
appreciate it. Thank you.
Now, as far as whether or not the media holds Trump and Kamala Harris to the same standards when it comes to lie, no. But I think they treat Trump more with kid gloves on some of these things and try to treat Kamala Harris a bit more seriously on this. There's a difference in how much of a policy is taken seriously from when Kamala Harris says something or when any liberal says it versus when somebody that's Trump or MAGA says it. And part of that is kind of just they don't take MAGA seriously, and they should. So when somebody says, when Trump says we're going to create a deportation force to deport 12 million people from the United States. Many of these people have children that are American citizens, but not relevant to this topic. The media doesn't take that seriously. They don't think Trump is going to be able to actually do something about it. So they don't actually focus on it too much. There's many of examples. Meanwhile, Harris says, hey, we're going to implement some sort of price control, right? She's not exactly what she said. She's talking about going after gouging. Media comes out and be like, hey, if you don't want to sound like a communist, maybe don't talk about price controls, right? So that's why I'm like, I don't really agree with that one. I think that the media should take Trump's policies and what he says more seriously. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't hold Kamala Harris to task or any liberal to task. I just want to see the same taken to task from both sides on that. And
I agree. I wish media would be more honest about everything. Yeah. I agree. So I think the media is part of the problem.
Sure. And I would say that the reason that's the case is because some of it's our fault as consumers. We want to go to places that tell us what we want to hear. You see, everybody's in their own information bubbles. So these conversations like this are very. important.
Honestly, when the only thing you can get right is the sports, it's not even worth watching the news anymore. I haven't watched mainstream media in years. I stopped. It's just I got tired of the rhetoric. I got tired of it.
There's issues with independent journalism that I have, so that's why I mainly read my news. I don't watch news very often. I'll listen to some podcast every once in a while, but I primarily read news because of that.
I like the sources, where they get their sources from. Sure. That's my thing, is where do you get your sources from? If you're going to say something, Back it up with your sources. A lot of media doesn't do that. They'll say a report. Well, that's pretty vague.
Yeah, or they'll have it buried in there, and you find
Yeah.
out it's from this group. Yeah,
Experts say it, and you find out it was a college, and it's like that's not experts. I'm sorry, I disagree. Just in New England, it's horrible. It's really horrible.
Yeah.
There's no really reputable news station here.
Mm,
I used to like them, but now I can't take them anymore.
that's a
I
shame.
used to be on them at one point.
You say that, and I do want to provide this. Although me starting my podcast is in due part to me having issues with like the left and the right and how they present information, and I want to
Sure.
provide a little bit more of a nuanced perspective. So I am willing to criticize the mainstream media, but at the same time, I do think we need to have a little bit of perspective in terms of understanding what we got going on. Is social media, podcasts, content creators, they're the same thing. There's a reason why with social media, a lot of people end up in their own echo chamber. You could even argue it's a little bit worse in that sense, considering they can go in deep pockets of political rhetoric that reinforce their opinion to an extreme. There's a reason why something that is, praising Donald Trump will get millions of likes, and something praising Kamala Harris will do similarly, and everybody under those comments are praising their respective sides. So I think a more appropriate understanding is that this is something people prefer, but I think it's appropriate, instead of just blaming mainstream media, but criticizing how people in general are not willing to escape from their echo chamber. So the reason why I want to put that out there, because you guys both made very good points in terms of the problems of mainstream media, as well as, some things that you said, Cypher, is that there's some issues with independent journalism too. All information should be looked at with a little bit of doubt, regardless if it's mainstream media or the social media. And everybody, I think we should all agree, should do your due diligence in
Absolutely.
vetting the information.
Should always be a little skeptical. Absolutely.
Right. So I just wanted to put that out there because I know so many people attack the mainstream media, but social media is arguably just as bad when it comes down to giving out information.
Yeah. Nobody's perfect.
A lot of so-called independent journalists are not independent. People need to realize that too. So.
Right. Yeah. And, that's as long as we kind of understand it, I think that's appropriate. But with that said, to kind of continue the conversation, so you heard a lot of the criticisms with it. You said that for Cypher, your response to a lot of the things that Ashley said is, yeah, there needs to be proper vetting for both sides when it comes to the left and the right, when it comes to Kamala and Donald Trump. You disagree in terms of the extent of the criticism and the severity of the criticism, of course, but okay, we can all agree that they should criticize both equally. Another thing that Ashley brought up is that Kamala has an experience. What is your response to that on why she wouldn't be a good candidate?
Yeah, I don't think she doesn't have enough experience. I think she does have enough experience, but I do understand why people may believe that she doesn't. There are some people that just want to see, when a person is running for the highest office, they want to see a lot of large business experience or some sort of like storied history in the Senate of getting bills passed and that sort of thing. Or maybe a governorship. I understand that. But Kamala Harris ran one of the biggest states' justice departments, the biggest state's justice department in the United States. And doing so, she did antitrust enforcement. She went after cartel members. She went after gang members. She went after businesses that were exploiting people, fraudsters, big banks, everybody. It ran the entire gamut during her entire history. So to say that she doesn't have enough executive experience when she had to run the biggest district attorney's office in the country, or as an attorney general, I would say that's probably not quite fair, simply because of that. But I do understand where it comes from, because some people do value business experience more than that level of executive experience. So I'm not going to hold people to the fire too much on that one. As far as what she's done as vice president, A lot of people like to talk about the fact that she was the border czar because the media sucks, and that's what the media called her. But she did have a lot of experience working with other countries in order to try to stem the flow of migration across the entire region. It was working up until it wasn't. That's always how these things go, right? There's a lot of push factors for migration within South America and Central and South America. Some of those push factors are beyond our control. If a country collapses, we can't control that unless we are the person that caused it to collapse. We weren't when it comes to Bolivia. When Bolivia was having its issues, we weren't responsible for that. When Brazil was having its issues, we weren't responsible for that. Venezuela, mixed bag on that a little bit, but I'm going to say it's more Venezuela's issues than the United States issues causing that. And that's a lot of the migration that we're seeing. We're seeing some of the migration come from those areas, as well as Nicaragua, Guatemala. They've had issues for decades. Haiti has been just a complete crapshoot since 2010 for various reasons. So those are things that we can't control. But what we can help stem that tide, there was agreements for across the entire region to take in more refugees from across the region, to have more sharing of that, to enforce more border actions across the entire region. And it did help, again, until it didn't. And we had those issues. So.
All right. Do you want to respond to anything that he said in regards to?
Well, as far as with Kamala Harris, I do remember that when she was prosecutor, she was keeping people in jail longer, or extending their sentences to use as cheap labor, and that was proven. Yeah, you could say, but honestly, if you're one of those people, not cool. And as far as the border, I just disagree. I think if you're coming over the border illegally, you could say what you want about separating kids and all that, but they shouldn't be coming over. And the cartels are part of the reason. And if she's going after the cartels, good on her. But it's definitely not working. She's vice president. She could do her part to help. If you want to call the border czar, but she's not at the border. She's not going to the border. I see Trump at the border. And honestly, my opinion is, if you want to come here legally. Is there a problem with coming here legally? Yes, I know there is. It's not an easy thing to do. I have plenty of friends who have come in the easy way.
It's not that it's easy. Way. It's not that it's easy or hard. It's not possible, really. That's the issue. It's people. Yeah, but for maybe the audience doesn't. So.
I get it, but at the same time, but you can't break the law. I mean,
right. I'm not saying that people should break the law.
Go in someone's house and live in someone's house.
I'm not
because
saying that people
you
should
have no place
illegally.
to go.
I'm just
that's
saying
illegal.
When we're saying it's difficult, it's not that it's difficult. I think that this is downplaying the issue. That's why I'm getting at it. I think that it's impossible to do it, and we should expand legal immigration. Should do it in a way that makes sense. We shouldn't just be like, okay, we can allow 2 million people here every year. Like, that's not going to work. That's not tenable.
No, it won't. We can't sustain that.
It should be done in a sustainable manner. We can talk about what those are. That's not the point of this conversation. Just saying that. I
don't know where it is. How it is out. You said you were in Texas. I'm not sure how it is there, but here, our governors put a lot of them up in hotels, and we're paying for that. We're paying for the hotels, the food. That's not cool.
I don't know where you're at. I do know
New England.
that. Well, you say New England, but that's a slew of different states. So that's what I'm saying.
Massachusetts.
Okay, Massachusetts specifically. Okay. I don't want to dox you, so if you're not comfortable, I'm sorry.
No, I'm fine. Okay. People know me.
So did Massachusetts pass a right to shelter law like New York and Colorado did?
I'm not 100% sure. I don't want to say yes if I don't know the facts.
Fair enough. I don't know either. So we'll use New York as an example because I think we both agree that New York did pass.
They have a right to shelter. I know that.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was for everybody in the area. Part of the reason that it was done that way is because people don't like the idea of people freezing to death. New England gets very cold. Right. No, this is for the. I'm not saying that you don't. We have to explain it. For the audience.
I understand. Absolutely.
So I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is then people that know that, especially in southern states like Texas, using that and exploiting it for political gain. And that's specifically why New York and Colorado were chosen as destinations to send the migrants there that were in Texas or Florida for various reasons. Some of this is legal, some of it's asylum, some of it was refugees, some of it was illegal. So, and just send them there,
Right?
Because they're exploiting that in order to get a political win. And I think that's bullshit. That should not happen, and we should be able to be able to look at them,
especially
like,
when you
did.
Right.
Go ahead.
Especially when you have that going on in New York, all right, and there are still people sleeping on the streets, all right. That it doesn't make any sense. But I mean, Ron DeSantis sent them to Martha's Vineyard in my neck of the woods, and they had them all gone within the day. The nightfall didn't even hit, and they were already in a bus leaving. And so it's we want this in your neighborhood, but not ours. That's how exactly a lot of people took it.
No, right? But where did Martha's Vineyard take
honestly don't know. I know they were moved to Cape Cod to go to an I think it was an Air Force base. But once they were there, I have no idea where they put them. They don't tell us where they put them.
So because at that point, after they were paired with, the way it typically works, and this is partly how it worked for Martha's Vineyard situation. Martha's Vineyard, people want to say it's one of the richest areas in the country. It is during tourist season, right? And that's during the summer, all right? Every other month during the year, it's mostly working class people that happen to live in the area to support the tourists that show up every year during the summer and sometimes some of the spring, as well as any of the vacation homes that the rich and powerful and famous people have, right? So I want to say the median income in Martha's Vineyard's actually only $30,000 a year. It's something like really low. So it's not like the richest area. And during the four or 5 days that happened, when they were like the migrants were being sent there on a plane without any stuff, they were very welcoming until they were like, okay, now we need to get these people in a place that's stable. We don't have the housing for them. Then they were taken to that Air Force base that was actually designed to welcome in refugees. So that was actually a thing that they did.
But we're on Martha's Vineyard. I mean, come on, they're multi-million-dollar homes there.
There's multi-million-dollar homes there.
They're not even being used, as a liberal would say. They're not even being used.
Yes,
they could put them up for the night. They got them up before nightfall, and it's like they didn't. They gave them. I think it was some beans and some oranges, and said, "Get on a bus and go." And it sent a message, because they said, "We love them. We love them here. We love to have them here." But they didn't want them there. They took them and they got them on a bus.
That's not exactly what happened. They were welcomed there, and then the governor stepped in to get them housing in a situation they had. Now, so what I'm hearing when you say that, though, when they had these multi-million-dollar homes that are empty, did you want the city of Martha's Vineyard or the township of Martha's Vineyard to force the rich and powerful people to open their homes up to those people?
Hey, they're forcing the taxpayers to pay for it at this point.
So you want it?
They're saying to us, no, I don't think they should be here in the first place. Okay, that's what I think.
Okay, you don't think they should be here in the first place. Ultimately, in a perfect world, in your perfect world, they would not be here in the first place, right? But
in a perfect world, you go through the legal channels. That's how you do things in this. We're a country of laws. Obama said it. Trump said it. Clinton said it. We're a country of laws.
But they're there then. They're there then, right? What's the next step? What's the next acceptable step for you? They
need to be deported. That's what they need to be. They don't belong here. They're here illegally. Look at the situation in New York. They're in New York. Crime is up. They're stealing. They're selling the stuff on the streets. It's ridiculous what's going on in New York.
Let's go back to Martha's Vineyard, because that's what we were talking about. Sure. So Martha's Vineyard, the majority of those people were actually asylum seekers. Asylum seekers can enter the country at any point. Doesn't have to be a legal point of entry. Claim asylum. And then they have to go through a court process to determine whether or not, well, first they go through a administrative, like, does your asylum case make sense? Yes or no. It's very arbitrary, but a lot of people say yes. So they go, and then they're like, okay, now we have to
catch and release. Judge. Yeah. I get it.
So it's catch and
it is. It's catch and release.
It's not catch and release, because they're not breaking the law. An asylum person is not breaking the law. They can come into the country.
They are breaking the law once they cross into this country. They are breaking the law.
Asylum seeking.
Because you're coming through an illegal port of entry.
No, not for asylum seeking.
But again, they're illegal ports of entry.
I'm going to put a pause right here. Because the immigration conversation can be for a different day. I do think there's a little bit of talking over each other in terms of what it means the value of asylum and being here versus not being here. I won't focus on that right now. We'll focus on that, or I will focus on that on a different day,
Oh,
because immigration is a very important issue. It's probably the most important issue for the current election.
yeah,
It
I
seems.
believe you.
Um,
I'm with you on that.
so that's something I'll put a pin in. But to allow you to respond, Ashley, for some of the things that Cypher has said in terms of the negatives of Donald Trump.
Okay.
So it's still actually kind of touching upon immigration because he did mention it. So I'll let you respond to this specific fact first.
Sure.
He has an issue with Donald Trump's border policy regarding family separation and children, and the state of children being in these detention centers. What do you think about this idea? Do you believe that this is okay? Do you believe this is not okay? What is what is your opinion regarding Trump's border
Well,
policy that Cypher
okay.
brought up?
Okay. Well, as far as the border policy of children,
Did I
they,
misquote
sh-
you, Cypher?
they
No, sorry, I was just mumbling to myself. Mic is off, so we're good.
Okay.
okay. But my whole issue with the border policy, they shouldn't be coming here. Okay, it shouldn't be happening. They shouldn't be taking their kids. It's a treacherous journey just to get to the border. Never mind crossing it. It's like separation. They were putting them in cages when Obama was in office. That was actually proven. They try to say it was Trump, and they showed pictures, and those were proven to be Obama's administration that did that, and then those tweets were taken down. And that's, I'm like, then
So
why
I
aren't we
wanna
doing something for the legal aspect?
Well, I want to reround you, right?
Sure, please.
Back to the question. For even if you want to criticize Obama, fine. For Trump, for doing this family separation, because these people are coming, whether you agree with them coming or not, they are here. And Trump's decision on how to deal with them is this border policy that separates families. Are you okay with that? Do you think it should be better? What is your opinion?
My opinion is anything you do that's illegal has a price. If you're a drunk driver and you get arrested, you're separated from your kids. You're not going to go home to your kids if you kill somebody. There are laws in place for a reason, and it's a messy situation. I'm not saying it's great that they're separated, but there are policies in place for this, and this is unfortunately how it is. And go through a legal port of entry. There are legal ports of entry to go through. And all I hear is, well, it's tough. It takes too long. I get that. Like I said, I've had friends who have done it the legal way, and it does take years, and it does cost money. It does, but they're willing to do the process because they want to be American citizens. That's my point.
Sorry. The problem is that the process is just fundamentally broken. It's not about cost. It's not about the time. There's no line. It's entirely arbitrary. There's all sorts of these issues. Those are all the issues. I'm bringing those up because I think that when you say, oh, it takes time and stuff like that, I personally think that's downplaying the issue with our legal immigration system. But to me, that's not important to this conversation. What's important to this conversation?
Any case in the courts will take time. I mean, if you file a civil suit, it's going to take months before you get heard.
It's not about, so we can talk about that a little bit.
Right.
So for me, when an asylum seeker specifically, we can talk about that because that's legal anywhere you enter the United States to claim asylum. You enter the United States because you can't claim asylum until you're actually in the country. So it doesn't matter where you go to. You don't have to go through a legal port of entry. We can say, hey, maybe they should be required to go to legal port of entry. Currently, they're not required to because of international treaties we signed going back to World War II. All right. And 1980 something. So that's there. Once they claim asylum, they're here legally, right? As soon as they're here legally, what the Trump administration wants to do and tried to do, and Lindsey Graham wanted a bill passed, was to have these people to be kept in detention camps all across the southern border, because it's always in southern states because they don't want to move them north. Even Republicans don't want to see them in their Midwestern cities. Is to keep them in there until their cases are heard. Not right. And no time limits, anything. Amounts to indefinite detention. For what? Right. Crossing a line on a map.
We don't know who these people are. We don't know who they are.
Okay.
Everyone's coming over the border. We're not vetting them properly.
We
don't know we don't even know who's coming into our country.
What would be
They're coming from
vetting?
all countries. They're only coming over
Okay,
the southern border.
Right.
We don't know what countries they're originating from. You
the
see the license
process.
Right.
The asylum process gets through all of that. Okay.
No, it doesn't.
So,
It's failed. It's a failed policy. It's a failed process.
okay. What would be good enough for you?
They get rid of their ID, so when they get caught, they don't have to answer the questions. They get caught, they get
That's
released.
not how it works.
Come back for another court date.
That's not how it works.
They're not being properly vetted.
Okay, but I want to know what
we don't know who's
vetting,
in this country.
I want to know what proper vetting is to you. That's what I asked.
Well, how can you define proper vetting? Do you think if they're
I
throwing
want to know
their
what
IDs
you
away, you think
think.
they're going to tell you?
I think
We need to know
want
where they're coming
what
from. We need to know what countries they're coming from. We
know
need
what
to
countries
know
they're coming from.
backgrounds on these people.
Okay,
Just like you would with any American citizen.
Cool. You
Right.
said backgrounds, all right? So how would a proper background system for asylum seekers would work for you?
They're not working with us. That's the problem.
No. What would it look like? I know they're not current. There's some countries that don't answer to the United States because of various different reasons, right? But what would a proper system look like?
They should have to be able to provide that information. If they're coming here because they're seeking asylum, you would think they would do everything in their power to make it as easy as possible.
Okay,
bring
so
an ID with you. Bring something with you to show. But they're not. They're throwing away. They throw them away before they get over the border because they don't want people to know. I'm sorry?
Where do you hear that information from?
I see that on documentaries.
What documentaries? By who?
Any documentary where they're at the border, you see them picking up the IDs.
So
I've not been to the border personally. I have not been there.
I know, but are these documentaries coming from Daily Wire? Or are they coming from Tim Pool? Where are they coming from? That's what
independent.
Independent doesn't mean independent. That's the problem. Like we have that issue. We both agreed. We all agreed that there's sometimes independent media is actually ideologically.
There's this one. I can't think of his last name, but his name is Peter, and he does drive-alongs with the sheriffs because they can talk openly, and they're disgusted with the border. They're absolutely disgusted with the border. He does the drive-alongs, and he asks the fair questions. He asks the hard questions, and I listen for and he explains to them, this is what they do. They'll send people over right? They'll send people over the border. And then while you're tending to them, the cartels.
So
the cartels will do their business.
This is, another pause in this one.
Okay.
This is definitely getting a little deep in the immigration.
I understand.
I'll definitely extend the offer. If you guys really want to talk about immigration, we can do this again. But it seems to me, and Ashley, let me know if I'm correct about this, that your take in regards to Donald Trump's border policy is that the people who come here who are trying to get into the country and the separation of their family is just a consequence of you trying to get into the country.
Illegally, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Absolutely.
All right. And so the next thing that Cypher brought up is that he believes that the 10% tariffs that Donald Trump poses universally to the goods coming into the country is bad for business, just to put it very simply.
And consumers.
Consumers. All right. What do you think about that? Do you think that type of tariffs would be good for the country and business?
I do. I do think it's good for the country because it sends a message to these other countries they can't take advantage of us. They can't take advantage. They can't just send everything here. There was a point at one time where America was self-sufficient. We did everything. When the men went to World War II, the women made the bombs. We were self-sufficient. We had steel industries. We did auto industries. We did all of that. We didn't rely on anybody. So we can do that. All I keep hearing is about how small businesses are thriving. Then why do you need goods and services from other countries if small businesses are thriving? We did it on our own before. We don't need to be on the knees of other countries. Is there going to be pros and cons? Anything you do is going to have a pro and con to it, but we shouldn't be bowing to other countries. Shouldn't be.
How is this bowing to other countries?
Because you're telling countries like China, it's okay to send your goods and services here because then
Why
you're going to
would-
mark them. You're going to mark them down, and you're going to put American companies out of business, and other
Okay.
other
So,
American
the
companies
issue-
are going to go overseas and do the same thing.
So okay, so we can work with that. So it seems to me that you're saying it's a bow down because China just has extremely cheap labor, and therefore their labor can be used to put American businesses out of business.
They will. They have.
No, I'm saying okay, they have, right? So, but that seems to be your issue, right? So it's not. Why would you consider that to be taking advantage of America?
It's a communist country. Why are we doing business with communist countries? We're not a communist country.
Why? Okay, so I am not a neoliberal, but from the neoliberal perspective, the reason why this was encouraged is because one, if a country is going to subsidize their steel, and this is their perspective, not mine. This is why, right? So just being clear, because I don't agree with this either. But if a country is going to highly subsidize, let's say, their steel industry and make it extremely cheap for us to buy their steel to build goods and services in the United States with that steel, and all we're giving them is money, which doesn't mean anything. It's just a piece of paper, and we're getting real goods and service for it. Why wouldn't we take that deal? That's theirs.
I get it. I
So,
don't agree
but-
with it either.
Right. But why would that be being taken advantage of? We're getting their steel, just to be clear, we're getting their steel and turning them over paper money that doesn't mean anything.
To me, it just feels like you're taking American jobs at this point.
Okay. So
We were
so the American jobs,
We were
right?
self-sufficient.
So, there's reasons after World War II, the entire world was destroyed. So the United States ended up being self-sufficient and building everything for the entire world. So there was that. So it's the jobs, and you feel like that because of the fact that that labor is so cheap in China that it shouldn't. You're putting Americans out of business, and China does manipulation stuff, right? Right.
Yeah.
So wouldn't the better policy then not be a 10% tariff across the board for every single country in the world for sending their goods and services to the United States? Some of the stuff we really like. For example, Samsung makes really good cell phones. Why would we want to pay an extra 10% for a Samsung cell phone or any of the other products they make just because it comes from South Korea? Like, I don't want to pay an extra 10% just because it comes from South Korea. We have Samsung plants in the United States. What are they going to do when they get a 10% tariff on that? Like,
I understand it, but at the same time, they could just build a plant here and make them here.
they are, and they're doing that. But not everything. Not everything.
But if you're going overseas, all that is a testing ground for them to bring more to go overseas, and that's what was happening. But you had countries that were leaving here, countries that were here. I mean, I worked for a company that left to go overseas.
So actually, I want to clarify a question because sometimes I hear things from either side, and I question how far you're willing to go with that logic. So my question to you is, you believe we should be more at home? Fair.
I do. Yeah.
Do you believe we should not allow any goods in the country?
Any goods? I mean, that's a really touchy subject. Any goods? Because I mean, there are things that other countries do that we don't do, and so I understand that. I'm not against trade. It's very touchy, but right now we're in a position where we really need to bring the jobs back here. People want to work, and
how many? So you say we need to bring the jobs back here.
We do.
So okay, no, I get that. What does that look like to you, though? What does that mean?
What is it?
What kind of jobs? Yeah, what kind of jobs?
It'd be nice to see a lot of the manufacturing jobs, a lot of the get your hands dirty jobs.
Great.
I've done that work.
Right.
Yeah.
What about automation?
It's a mixed bag. I mean,
I
remember when it first came out, people were against it, and now people kind of embrace it. But everyone eventually gets phased out of their job. I get that.
The reason I bring that up is because a lot of this, there was a lot of jobs that did go overseas, did go to China, not really Mexico so much. There's enough give and take with the NAFTA deal that there was actually a net creation of jobs, right? But you like manufacturing jobs, right?
Yeah. It was solid.
Let's go back.
Solid jobs.
Let's go back. Yeah, they're solid jobs, union paid jobs, well paid jobs. Yeah. Get it? All right. Are they only solid because they pay well, or are they solid because of the type of work they offer to you?
A little bit of both.
If you had to
When I
pick
was doing
one.
that, when I was doing that kind of work, it was a lot of, it was job security. There was plenty of work.
There was job security, but automation is
Yes.
making that not the case anymore. And the reason I wanted to bring up the reason I brought up carrier plant earlier is because, one, I think Trump lied about it, but two, a lot of the jobs that Carrier were saying that they were going to make in the United States, when we gave them that supplemental 10 million or something to build a plant, actually were automated away. They're like, hey, we're not actually going to hire people. This is going to be a highly efficient plant. We're going to have a lot of these automated. There still would be some highly paid jobs here, but about maybe a third of what was going to be intended. That's going to continue to happen.
Oh yeah,
So,
I'm not saying it's not.
Right. But but that means job security in manufacturing isn't what it used to be. So is it just the fact that it was job security, or do you think there's something intrinsically better about manufacturing jobs than, say, I don't know, a person that works at the desk at a cell phone store?
I can tell you from my experience, when I was working in a plant, it was, you had a feeling of family there, and everybody had your back. When someone got hurt, everybody stopped what they were doing.
Cool.
And I've worked jobs since then.
Didn't have
People,
the same feeling.
they hear a noise, they go right back to work. Nobody is like that outside of that kind of job.
Why
There's
do you think that's
nothing
the
like
case?
that. Because people actually cared about their work and they cared about the people. And it wasn't just, to them, it wasn't a job. It was more than a job. And that's
But why
that's
do you
why.
think that's the case? Why do you think? Okay, I'll bring up the example again. Why do you think that is more of the case for somebody that worked at a manufacturing plant versus somebody that worked at the desk at a cell phone store? Why do you think that's the case?
Because it was part of their identity. It was who they were.
Why is it part of their identity?
Because they felt like a part of the whole.
Okay, but why do they?
It wasn't just them. They understood there was more to it than them, and they knew that they were a cog in that wheel that made things happen.
Great. Do you think that is because of an intrinsic nature of manufacturing, or do you think it's because of the union, the fact that people knew each other and job security, or do you think it's just because it's a manufacturing job?
The manufacturing job, I think more. I'm not saying the union was more or less. Where I was, it was unionized, and I've also worked jobs that weren't unionized. With jobs that weren't unionized, I think there was more of a disconnect between management and employee. With a union, it kind of kept things more in check.
Okay.
But
I think
the
you and I
feeling
agree
on
there.
the floor was still the same. It was still, you look out, everybody that worked around you was more than just a coworker. You knew them, you talked to them, you had your breaks with them. When the company threw a function, you all knew each other.
Do you think that then I think that we agree that this is an issue. I just don't think it's because of the particular job in question. I think that it's more about the kind of camaraderie that the job entailed, due to better job security, better pay, better benefits, better, and all those things. And I think that if we didn't give, but if we made that kind of thing for more jobs, then you would see that level of community take root in other workplaces. And I think that it would solve a lot of the issues. And then there wouldn't be this necessarily this feeling of, oh, I'm being taken advantage of, because the job that you would have would be more in line with what you expect a job to be. Do you think that's fair? Like, not saying that you would necessarily 100% agree with me, but agree with my take talking about making it better.
Well, I like the idea of going to work, and it feels like where I work now, and I'm not going to disclose that, but where I work now, there's a sense of family. If something happens to somebody, everyone's concerned.
Yeah.
And it's not a manufacturing job. So it does exist, but you'd be hard pressed to find it today. And would I like to see that kind of mindset in the workplace? Absolutely. Who wouldn't? I mean, you take more pride in your work knowing that the company and the people care about you. Absolutely.
I think the reason that that's the case, though, is because of the pay and benefits that usually entail for manufacturing and union jobs versus the pay and benefits for a similarly skilled worker or a person coming off the street in other industries. So for me, I work at a non-union job. I work in tech, and I work for a very large conglomerate.
Okay.
I get paid, but I get paid decent. I get paid pretty well. Every single one of my coworkers knows me. I know every single one of them. I've met some of their kids. We've had work functions and everything like that. And I believe the reason that that's the case is because all of us feel like we're valued due to how the job treats us. And this is because the job is actually, it's a French company, so there's a little more leeway in how they treat people with the culture that entails. But I think that if we got that into the United States in more places, I think a lot of the problems that you're having would go away.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily the unions. I think my point is the unions kind of keep everybody more in check. When it's not a union job, people tend to, I mean, there's still drama. I'm not going to say it's a paradise. It's not a paradise. I've worked with grown men who act like 5-year-olds, and it is what it is. You know, you can try to, work the culture, but you can't fix the person. If the person's going to have that mentality, they usually don't last long, or they just get ignored, or both. I've seen the ugly side of it. I don't mind, but I don't mind. Like I said, a decent wage. Yes, it's good to have. Union, it's give or take. It depends on the strength of the union. If the union's willing to back the workers, a lot of them don't.
Which ones?
The one I worked in, they weren't very. They would stand their ground to a point, and then once push came to shove, they would buckle like a belt. They weren't very well.
I'm gonna pause this.
Sorry.
I'm gonna pause this. No,
Sure.
you're fine. So very productive conversation. At the very least, it seems, Ashley, that you do believe, whether or not you are okay or you disagree with the number, you do believe trade with other countries is good. Now it depends on the resources,
and in some aspects, yes. I'm not against trade. I'm not anti-trade. I just think that we could be doing more ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. The last thing that he mentioned is that there is bias enforcement on certain issues that Donald Trump does while he is president. Do you agree with that assessment? And if you agree with that assessment, do you think it's okay that he does this?
Well, I would need to know what this bias is.
All right. Feel free to let us know, Cypher.
Yeah, so I think that in some of the cases, like I said, with the carrier plant is one. When it comes to regulations,
you said the what plant?
The carrier plant. That was before he officially was in office. It was 2015. I think it was right after the election, and he was already making like, oh, he's not even president yet, and he's already got this good carrier deal. The state of Indiana agreed to give like $6 million, and the federal government is going to give like another $2 million or something from private. I don't remember all the details. It was something along those lines, like a $10 million total. But Trump negotiated this deal, and it turned out to be just completely bullshit, just to make it look good. And Carrier actually got some additional tax breaks from the federal government to keep the plant after Trump got into office, and ended up taking advantage of those and not doing what it said it was going to do. So more people need to look into this. It was one of the serious things. I was like, okay, maybe Trump could be okay, and the vitriol and stuff, but maybe he could do some good things. And then after that happened, I'm like, we're done. There's also some of the deals that his businesses made, and then he ended up going with some of those stuff in order to get those business deals, at least in my opinion, passed. One of those was negotiating a $5 million, I think it was $5 million or so deal with Saudi Arabia. And then shortly after after that deal went through, there was an agreement to build something for Trump inside Saudi Arabia. So I didn't like that. Similar thing happened with Kushner after the Abraham Accords were done after he left office. Kushner and the Kushner Group got $2 billion from investment from from Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates to do things. And that's pay to play to me, beyond like obvious pay to play that people should be concerned about. And I'm not here for it at all.
All right. Ashley, response.
I don't think any politicians are going to be honest with you, no matter what you say. I mean, you can sit there and say Trump did this and Trump did that, but when Biden says tax the rich, he's talking about himself. I mean, he's not exactly just making $400,000 a year and doesn't have more than that. They all have money. And every time they say they want to tax the rich, I always say turn the mirror to yourself, because you guys are the rich, and they're not going to tax themselves. It's not going to happen. The whole tax the rich is a political play. You could sit there and jumble all these deals you want. I'm fed up with all these wars we're having. We're funding all these wars, and that's our money, and we're funding them. And
so
I mean,
I want to
yeah.
reroute you a little bit. So
Go for it. Yeah.
The examples, let's say that you can verify that the examples that Seinfeld brought up in terms of Trump biasly doing things with people he likes while he's president is true, and you verify it with your independent sources. Are you okay with Trump doing that, or do you think it's a bad thing that he's doing that?
Well, like I said, it's politics. They all do it. And there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, if you really think
they all do it, is it
right? I mean, if you think Kamala and Biden are being 100% honest, I got some swampland to sell you. Am I okay with bias? I don't think it's great. If he's biased towards a company and the company can produce, great. If you can work hard and produce, absolutely. I don't have a problem with that. If I go to take my car to get fixed somewhere and the guy doesn't look, am I going to be fair? No, I'm going to go to the guy I think is the best. I'm going to be biased. I'm going to this guy looks like a good jamoke. I'm going to take my car to him. I mean,
do you think?
It depends.
Cypher, before you ask your question, I just want to ask one more question for Ashley.
Sure.
Then you can ask your question. So if it can be proven that Trump is biased, because you just said if he's biased to a company and it's good for the country, great. If it can be proven that Donald Trump is biased for a company and it's not good for the country, would you be not okay with that?
I think it would depend on the circumstances of the situation. I really do. I can't just say it's bad. I mean, that would be ignorant to say it's bad. I would need to know why it's bad, what the circumstances are. I mean, I have to know.
Yeah. So, and this is part of that. Do you think it is a little weird that after Trump did the Abraham Accords, which didn't actually do anything for the Israeli-Palestinian issue? If anything, it made it worse, but that's a whole separate conversation. Do you think it's a little weird that after that deal went through and there was pomp and circumstance with Pompeo and Trump and Kushner making this grand overture, that then the Kushner Group, Jared Kushner's family's business, got $2 billion of investments from the Saudi government for this deal? Do you think that that's a little weird? Do you think that should be investigated?
Do I think it should be investigated?
Yes.
I mean, that's not for me to decide, but I mean, I'm sure they're going to do it anyway. They're going to investigate it anyway. They're going to do what they want.
Okay.
Politicians don't have our needs in mind.
Was that?
Politicians don't really have our needs in mind. They never. None of them do.
Okay, that's fine. Do you think though that is there's a reason to investigate that after this Abraham Accords was signed and that there was no give and take for the Palestinians at all, and that there was this grand overture for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, that then the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia gives $2 billion to Kushner, basically? Do you think that is a pay to play? Do you think that is at least the appearance of pay to play that should be investigated?
Well, I don't go by appearances. I don't know.
Okay.
I'd rather see proof.
Okay. So do you think that Hunter Biden should have been investigated?
Should have been investigated? Yes or no? I mean, I'm more upset at Hunter Biden because of what they did prove. I mean, what they did. I
What
mean,
did they prove?
come on, the laptop. I mean, they tried to suppress that laptop in 2020. Give me a break.
Okay, so but you don't care about the business stuff that he did. Not really.
Business is business.
Okay.
But you know,
You're upset about the laptop situation, but you don't really care that Hunter Biden might have been getting paid play.
I care about the laptop situation because it was suppressed on purpose.
No, I got you. I'm just making
It was
sure.
suppressed by the media. Like I said, I don't like the media. It was suppressed by the media. Anybody that talked about it was taken off social media. Their videos were taken down. If it was fair play across the board, I would probably be a little bit more open to both sides, but it's not.
Okay. No, I got you. If it was proven though that was actually a hacked thing from the Russian government, do you think the companies that actually quote unquote suppressed it were doing the right thing, or do you think they shouldn't have done that even if it was hacked from the Russian government with fake information?
Again, I'd have to see the facts, but do I think it should be investigated? Go for it. If you want to investigate, investigate it, but you have to have something that comes out of it.
This is a separate question. Yeah. So I understand that you are upset with the media saying suppressing the Hunter Biden's laptop story.
Yeah.
I think social media made a call and it ended up being the wrong call. Do I fault him for it? Not as much as you do, because it was quickly unsuppressed, like in 2 days on Facebook. I think it was a week on Twitter, or vice versa. It could have been the reverse of that. So I'm not really too concerned about that. My question though, it was that, but my question was about the impropriety of the business that was supposedly approved by that laptop. You don't actually care about that then?
Well, again, I have to hear the facts of the case. Okay. I mean, it was investigated and there was guilt found.
Was there guilt found?
As far as I heard, yeah, he was guilty.
He was guilty of what?
He was guilty. Well, I know that there were gun charges, illegal gun charges.
That wasn't the issue with the laptop. The laptop. So okay, that's fine. Do you think social? So the follow-up question to that was: do you think if it turned out that this is not what happened, the story ended up being mostly proven true, there's some questions about how much of the information came from the laptop and from other sources, blah blah blah. But the reason why social media actually did what it did is because they were under the impression that this was a Russian government sponsored hack that was filtering information for political gains and for Russia's benefit in order to smear Biden, as well as make sow chaos within the American system. And the assumption was that there was going to be fake information on on those leaks as well. If that was true, it wasn't, or at least we can't prove that it was true. If that was true, though, should have social media actually did what it did, which is treat it as a hacked leak for an adversary campaign that should be suppressed. Do you think that if that was the case, should they have done that?
No, I think the job of social media is to be a platform. Well, a platform for free speech. Not
so
for,
you don't think
I think people are smart enough to understand what's going on. I think I give people credit to be a little more intelligent. If they get all the information, if something smells too good to be true, it usually is.
Okay, that's fair. I just wanted to know what your actual opinion about that was. So that satisfies me.
I have more of an argument with social media suppressing than anything else. If something's true, absolutely bring it out.
Okay,
fair enough. One more question to you, Cypher, and then we'll go into closing remarks. So do you believe Donald Trump is more biased? Because this is something that Ashley brought up when I asked her the question. Do you believe Donald Trump is more biased than other political candidates? And let's make this a little bit more direct compared to Kamala Harris. Do you think he is a more biased in terms of his enforcement than a Kamala Harris would be? Or if you can't speculate for Kamala, than a Joe Biden was while he was president?
Yeah, I can't speculate for Kamala Harris. For that, I would say compared to Biden, with the investigations that have been happening with Trump as well as by the House GOP, yes, more biased than the Biden administration has been, simply because the House, when including House GOP, the House GOP has been using their subpoena powers for political purposes and trying to get to make the administration look bad for various things, and a lot of those turned out to be duds. Without including the GOP in general, probably I would say I would lean yes. I would lean yes to it. It might not be enough to care, but I'd have to look more into exactly the kind of things that the Biden administration had gone after some businesses for various different things. But the quid pro quo stuff, the stuff with the Abraham Accords, the deals with the Saudi government prior to that, the Yemen, the not caring about Jamal Khashoggi getting assassinated, stuff like that. Those are what are the biases that I was talking about that I don't agree with. And that's a philosophical bias. He doesn't care because we're trying to make a deal with Saudi Arabia. So he's not going to call out a country that assassinated a non-citizen, an American green card holder, so a legal resident, but not a non-citizen, because that might make us look bad to the Saudi government. And he was trying to do some sort of deal, whether that was for him or the country. I think it was more for him, but he's not going to call it out because it's going to make him look bad. Bias towards Putin. I don't have anything in common culturally with Putin. Some Republicans do. So that's going to be the bias that I'm going to be concerned with. I want to see more bias towards Western Europe and South Korea, maybe a little towards India, Southeast Asia, and I want to see less towards Putin and people like him. So that's where it is.
All right, fair enough. So closing remarks, unless Ashley, you want to respond to that, of course.
Well, I'm not a big fan of. You can say about Saudi Arabia and all that. My whole thing is what's going on at home. I see, and I have to lump in Kamala with Biden because, according to Biden and Kamala, she's the last one in the room, and it's a Biden-Harris administration. I don't like the fact that they are locking up trying to put Trump in jail, with locking up your political opponents. I don't like that. I think that's ridiculous. If you're afraid of the guy, you're afraid of the guy. But if you shouldn't do that, you don't do that. That's my opinion.
So the president of a former president of the United States shouldn't be held accountable for laws that he breaks. Or they break. Laws
that were decades old, that were misdemeanors, that they trumped up charges on. No, I don't think so.
New York, that's not Biden administration.
It's New York. It's ridiculous. The prosecutor said, "I'm going to get Trump." That was his platform.
It's not exactly what happened.
Again, I'm just saying I am biased. I am biased against them. No, I just think it's wrong to do it. To do it. It's amazing. It all came out in an election year.
Do you think
they had 3.5 years to do it? They could have done it decades ago.
The Trump case actually happened and started to come to fruition in 2018. For that, it was put on pause due to a court ruling that said a sitting president cannot be held civilly liable for anything while sitting as a president. So that's why it took time to actually come in. It's not because it's an election; it's because of that ruling.
Decades old stuff that was already, it was
ridiculous. Decades, but that was for the Trump organization. The case that he is under, that was found guilty of with the felonies, was actually the payments for Stormy Daniels to lie about the fact that he fucked a porn star.
The same Stormy Daniels who's paying his legal fees. Give me a break.
Stormy Daniels is paying whose legal fees?
Paying Trump's legal fees from, 3-4 years ago? Not 4 years ago, 6 years ago. They already tried this once, and she ended up paying his legal fees.
We're gonna put a pin in that one.
Yeah, that's not the same. That's not the same case. But it's neither here nor there.
But look at the outcome. She's paying his legal fees now. She's trying.
That doesn't matter because it's not the same case. So, anyways, my point is that if Trump did break the law, should he be held accountable for breaking the law?
Shouldn't they all?
Yes.
Shouldn't they all? You think Biden's innocent? Biden's not an innocent person.
Okay, so but that's just whataboutism.
They dismissed Biden's case for taking top secret documents, because he was unfit. He couldn't remember anything.
That's not
he
why
was unfit.
Dismissed.
And we saw that on the debate stage.
I did a whole 40-minute breakdown of every single thing that.
That's nice. I'm very happy for you, but unfortunately, he dropped out. Not short after that debate.
Cypher,
That's not what I'm talking about.
Hold on. I'll allow you to respond to that claim that was just made about Biden, and then I have one more question to wrap the show up. So go ahead.
Yeah, the Her document case is not what the debate has nothing to do with the Her document case. The Her document case, the reason that the charges weren't filed is not because of Biden's incompetence. It was because of the facts of the case. The reason I say I did a 40-minute breakdown of this is because I went through almost every single page of that 400-page non-charging document, findings document. So what is findings document to go over why Biden wasn't held accountable for that versus why Trump wasn't held accountable. And the reason why Biden wasn't held accountable for it is because they couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Biden purposefully kept documents in his residence that he should
in his
not have.
garage.
That he
Say
should
it.
not
It
have
was his
kept.
garage.
It doesn't matter.
Next to his Corvette.
You got to
That's
let him
not
respond.
important to the. That's not important to
It is
the
a
case.
garage.
It's not
Give me
to
a
this.
break. A garage.
It's not important to this, to what I'm saying. All right.
It is.
Biden
That's
wasn't-
bias right there. It is.
Actually,
No, it's
you gotta
not
let him
important to the-
respond. We gotta let him respond. The symbol's up.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
All good. It's not important to what the point that I'm making, because the reason that it wasn't beyond a reasonable doubt is because the records that were kept were decades before some of those rules were put into place from his time as senator, and because they couldn't prove that he actually knowingly had said documents at his residence due to the back and forth of moving residencies and the fact that he actually cooperated with the FBI and NARA to return documents that he wasn't supposed to have. The reason that Trump was charged is because Trump refused to cooperate with NARA, and they could prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump knowingly had these documents because they had him on record in recorded conversations with other people saying, hey, look, I got these documents. I'm not supposed to have them now, but under president, I did this thing. Look at me. Woo. And that's why they were charged. Why Biden wasn't. Biden cooperated. Trump didn't. Had Trump just turned over those documents instead of shuffling them around to try to hide them and have some lackeys flood his basement at Mar-a-Lago in order to destroy video evidence of the movement of these documents, Trump wouldn't have been charged either. That's just the facts of the matter.
All right. And just to be fair, I will allow you to respond, Ashley.
Okay.
But like I said, this will be the final one, and then I have
Yes.
one more question, and then we'll wrap it up.
That's fine. Yeah. Well, again, you can sit there all you want and say what you want. That's fine. But my opinion is, and I'm sticking with it, he was a president. He had the rights to take those documents. Biden was not. And Biden didn't know what he was doing with them. That sends shivers down my spines. If you have top secret documents and you're not knowing what you're doing with them when there's moves, that sends a bad vibe my way. I don't care what anybody says. I also don't remember seeing police raids going on at his house, seizing the documents from his garage. I do remember seeing police raids at Mar-a-Lago. So it's two different things, sicking the FBI on somebody, and then just, oh, well, Biden has them too, and downplaying it, and he gave them back. He shouldn't have had them. He had no right to take them either. If you're going to go that way and say, oh, they both shouldn't have them, neither one of them should have had them. And it doesn't matter if you're being cooperative, you still did it. That's a ridiculous excuse. He cooperated, so it was okay. No, it wasn't okay. He had them in his possession for years. Years he had them in his possession. And it was next to his Corvette in his garage. That's embarrassing. At least Trump had them locked up. Give me a break. I mean, come on. I'll end it there. I don't want to get into an argument. I just want to keep it simple.
Okay. We'll just leave it there. With that said, I do have one more question. There's a lot of back and forth. Obviously, there's a lot of disagreement. Hopefully, there's some self-reflection in terms of things were said, because I am very much aware when it comes to political debates, the unwillingness and the need to stay strong on your stance and your side, but allowing you to mull over everything that was said is something you can do on your own time. I don't need a agreement of that here. But one thing that I will ask both of you is, do you understand, not better, but do you understand why the people on their respective sides support the candidate that they support? Do you have a good understanding? And is I'm gonna leave it there. I don't want to ask anything further. So do you have that level of understanding, Ashley? You first.
I actually don't. I don't. When I hear people saying they're going to vote not Trump, that means anyone but Trump, and we just got that with Joe Biden. And I mean, come on. I would have more respect if they had a primary. I mean, they talk about democracy, and they're not giving us you're not getting your vote in the primaries, and that to me is a disgrace on democracy. I can't understand why they would support the Democratic Party at this point. I really can't. I mean, to hate somebody so much that you would give up your democratic rights is just ridiculous to me. I just don't see it.
So you don't believe Cypher today made any valid points?
I'm not saying he didn't make any valid points. We did agree on a couple of things. I'm not saying that. I can't see why anybody would want to support this administration or Kamala Harris, because she's part of this current administration. When they take away your democratic rights in a primary and votes, I just don't see it. That to me is huge. That's tremendous. And why people would want to flock to that. I mean, they took away your right and you're like, oh, I want that person. No, I can't see it.
All right.
Nothing personal. I just don't agree with Cypher on a lot of issues, but there were some I think he made valid points on. But
well, I would say saying that you don't understand anything, that any reason why they would support who they support can be seen as personal, but fair enough.
It might be. It could be. I mean, I mean, we both have been debating this, and I think there's some things that maybe he saw personal, some things I saw personal.
Well, I'm just talking about the whole idea is the unwillingness to try to understand the other side. Can you see why that would be problematic?
It's hard to understand the other side because every time I disagree with something, and it's not Cypher. It's what I see. It's usually on social media, or if it's in the big city. If it's in a city, you get called a Nazi. That's ridiculous. I can disagree. I
just want to be clear on this. I have personally, I don't align with either side.
Sure.
I have issues with a lot of people on the left. I have a lot of issues with people on the right.
Right.
I understand that there's problems with both sides, but I do understand at the core that there are good people on the Democrat side, and I understand they have valid points. Similar to I understand why people support Donald Trump. So the unwillingness to understand, in my opinion, and I want to see if you agree with this, the unwillingness to understand, can't you see how that's problematic for democracy?
I can, and I am usually open to any kind of dialogue. That's why I agreed to come on, because I'm okay to talk about things, about how I feel, listen to the other side, and that's fine. But I can tell you in my travels, it's not that way, but I understand what you're saying. There are people on both sides who make valid points, and like I said, I'm always willing to listen to any civil discussion and any ideas. But the minute I disagree, it just seems like I get labeled, and I think it's wrong.
I'm aware because, like I said, both sides do it. Both extremes, very hateful people on both sides. But we have,
and I'm not extreme right. I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to listen.
Fair enough. But the reason why I keep on hitting this point, because I think it's very important, because we have someone like Cypher here, very respectful throughout the entire conversation. Didn't call you out of your name at once, and he was just speaking on his personal opinion and his perspective. So I don't see a need to. I wouldn't see a reason why you would associate him with the crazy lefties that call everybody Nazis. Right?
Fair enough. So I apologize if I came off that way.
So that's why
I don't take anything like this personally, but I appreciate the apology, so that's accepted.
It's not meant to be an insult.
That's why the question of do you understand is so valuable, because that unwillingness to understand is a dismissal on people who are reasonables opinions. So that's why I'm stucking in it, hammering it so much, because that is why things are so toxic nowadays. as of right now is because of that unwillingness to understand and just label them. So that's why I kept on asking it. So I'll let you mull that over, but same question to you, Cypher.
I can't speak for every Trump supporter, but for Ashley's perspective here, it seems that she is very much concerned with border enforcement, as well as the fact that she feels that we have been taken advantage of as a country, and that leading to some sort of loss of community and sense of purpose that could help people find what it is that they are looking for, whether that is a better job or more sense of shared civic responsibility and civic engagement. So I understand where these things are coming from. Just disagree about how we fix them.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, that's all we got for today. I appreciate both of you all coming on to the podcast. I think
I thank you as well. I thank you as well for having me.
Oh, no problem. I think this was a very interesting conversation, very productive conversation to hear both sides. This was the first attempt at this new format for my podcast. Future episodes, I'll be getting a lot more detailed on policy issues. So like I said, the next one will be about immigration, and we're going to get very detailed in that one. But this one was more generalized to really trying to gauge people's opinions on Trump and Kamala to start off. So it was a pretty surface level conversation at the end of the day. Any final comments, remarks, plugs that you want to have?
Go ahead, Cypher.
I was waiting for somebody to start. So final plug. I do run a YouTube channel and a TikTok under Cypher Report. Sorry, it's over here. Camera's backwards. Cypher Report. I try to do deep dives into various topics. We've covered the Libya civil war way back in the day. We covered the UK's flirtation with more conservatism and other things like that, and try to produce highly produced content from that. Last episode, like I said at the beginning of the show, was on TikTok. It's a deep dive into all the issues surrounding TikTok, whether it should be banned, what we can do to fix these issues, what should happen with it. And it was about an hour and a half, and I put a lot of time and effort into that. So if you're interested in getting to the nitty gritty of that, go ahead and check it out on my channel. Again, it's on YouTube at Cypher Report. So Ashley, appreciate you being cordial on this program and not getting too combative. It's greatly appreciated. So thank you. And
it doesn't solve anything to do that. I get passionate about it, but I still respect other people's views. Absolutely.
Fair enough.
Right now, I'm not doing anything right now. I did have a radio show for about 10 years, but I'm in between right now. I do have a page on Facebook right now. It's called Bottoms Up Yours. And I do engage in some political discussion on there as well. So if anybody's interested, just look it up and join.
All right. Excellent. And I try to be as fair as possible, as objective as possible. Of course, I have my own opinions about the issues, but real quick, first gauge, do you think I was fair to both of you guys throughout?
Yeah, I think you moderated it well, and I thought some of the follow-up questions were actually pretty cool. Absolutely.
Yeah, you did really good on the follow-ups. I appreciate those. So,
and again, that was a pretty big
show better than I
water
could.
You had there. That kind of freaked me out. But you had, I didn't know if it was the camera, or if it was just the water bottle. But I was like, wow, that's a big bottle of water. I can see the humor in all this too,
Yeah, of course. So as you guys can see, for future episodes, just trust that I know what I'm doing. So with that said, appreciate you guys. You have a good one. Take care.
You have as well.